Good evening. I'd like to call to order the meeting for Bedford Township, February 19th, 2019. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Bob, if you'd like to open us up in prayer.
Shall we pray? Father God, we thank you for being among us this evening. We thank you for the servants, the public servants that have chosen to put their lives on hold, in a sense, to make decisions that make a difference in people's everyday lives. We pray as they decide tonight that you would give them wisdom, that you would give them courage, that you would give them the ability to make the kinds of decisions that would be pleasing and acceptable in your sight. We thank you for what you're about to do, and we pray these things in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Okay, item 2, approval of the agenda. I'd like to add to the agenda a resolution to approve uniform video service local franchise agreement with Buckeye Cablevision, and a change order to professional services agreement with the Manick & Smith Group for the Downtown Temperance TAP grant. And Barry's here to explain the first one, and I'd like to change E and F. Ms. Tinneberry?
I would like to object to additions to the agenda. I would make a motion to approve the agenda as presented, only because we have such a long agenda. So many things are need extensive discussion, and I have a couple things laying before my desk that you didn't mention, and I'm wondering if those are supposed to be on the agenda as well. So I would move to approve the agenda without additions as presented.
Do we have a support?
Obviously not. The meeting's long
Seeing
enough.
none.
We just
Motion failed. Do we have a motion to accept the agenda as presented, or as I changed? Amended? The amended agenda?
We're adding what items?
We're adding,
8H and 8I?
that's right.
Okay.
And the reason for Buckeye is Trudy asked me to put it on Friday. If we don't, it automatically renews. And that's why Marty's here to explain it, because he's the one that's been working on it. But otherwise, we'll have to hold a special meeting for it.
Mr. Supervisor, point of clarification is Buckeye H and the other item was I. Could you
That's
restate
correct.
that?
No, Buckeye's not H. It says 8 H's.
It doesn't matter which one is, I mean, it's,
Well, it certainly does. It's part of the.
okay, so what do you want,
Robert's
what do you want Manick & Smith to be?
H, it's
Okay,
already labeled
and then,
H.
okay.
Got it. Thank you, sir.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved?
I'll support.
Okay, motion and second, discussion. For the second one, the Manick & Smith Group is here tonight to explain the changeover for the contract for the downtown TAP grant. We can always table it if we're not happy with his answer. I know it's late, but he came to me Thursday or Friday as well on that one. So, could you please call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
No.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Hirschberger's absent. Mr. Peroni?
Aye. What did Mr. Montres vote?
Aye.
Sorry, okay, so the motion passed 5-1. Okay, item 3, the consent agenda. The agenda committee recommends to A, approve and place on file the minutes of the February 5th, 2019 regular meeting of the Bedford Township Board. B, to accept and place on file the general savings, pooled funds, and CD reports from the treasurer. C, approve and place on file the revenue expense report and balance sheet for the period ending January 31st, 2019. D, appoint Kristen Massingill to the Lewis Avenue Redevelopment Committee for a first term ending 12/31/2020. E, appoint Janelle DeFelice to the Library Advisory Board for a first term ending 12/31/2021. F, appoint Christopher Zawisza to the Fire Advisory Board for a first term ending 12/31/2020.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Okay, motion is supported by Mr. Clements. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni.
Aye, and the motion passed 6-0. Item 4 is presentations. We have none. Item 5, public comment. Comments limited to 2 minutes for board agenda items only. Come on up.
Good evening, Logan Tisdale, 1308 Brandywine Street. This is in regards to consent agenda A, approve and place on file the minutes of February 5th, 2019, regular meeting of the Bedford Township Board. I noticed that on the agenda for that meeting there, it said that when I asked you the question about what other hours meant in concern the Monroe County Sheriff's monthly reports, it didn't mention on the minutes what that actually was. In fact, it said this, and it said, and gave an explanation of what other hours means on the sheriff's reports. I would like specifically on this report, what other hours actually means according to your understanding of that, Mr. Peroni. Could you possibly tell me what that means?
In my comments, I will.
Okay. You'll make that tonight at the comments then?
Yeah, I'll do my best. Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any more comments from the public? Seeing none, moving on to staff reports. 6A, request for approval to print hand cover additions to the ordinance resident guidebook. Officer Cecil?
Thank you. I'll try to make this fast. In regards to the resident guidebook that we created a year ago, we've been passing those out. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback through the community. All I'm asking here is to professionalize this book a little bit, to have this put into a hardback cover where it will get more use and look more professional for items that we're handing out. I did go to 3 different printing companies to check into having this done, and I presented each one of you a packet of that, and our local help printers actually came in at the lowest bid to take care of this. So I would ask this board if we could get an approval to have the extra money either into our budget or the community budget to allow us to professionalize this booklet.
I just want to say that one of the biggest things we've been trying to do within the ordinance department is educate people on some of our simple ordinances. You know, and this booklet really identifies a lot of the simple things with burning and with some of our things that we deal with on a daily basis. And we had the conversation of, you know, people are more apt to keep a booklet that, you know, is professional, not made of, you know, I mean, just
Correct.
regular sheets of paper than, you know, so we thought it'd be a good idea to make it professional, something they can hang on to. Ms. Tinneberry?
Define hardcover.
It's like it's going to be like the
Thicker.
Is it
sheet of
a
paper.
hard stock, is it a hard stock?
paper.
Paper.
Yes,
Okay,
yes, yeah. It's
okay.
not a book binder type thing. It's an
Okay.
actual pamphlet type booklet. I don't know if you've seen the senior booklet that we ordered for our seniors program, but it would be a cover similar to that.
Okay, well, for a teacher, hardcover means something different. but
Okay.
I totally agree. People don't even buy hardcover books anymore, so it's a
This would it would preserve the
nicer
life of this and it make it look
cardstock.
more professional,
Right,
yes.
okay.
So it's heavy cardstock or not laminate though, right?
Right,
Yeah, because I say I can't believe that price for laminate.
yeah.
Mr. Montry?
Is it currently like how we were presented to it? Is that what its current state is? Is like
Yes, yes.
printer paper?
Yep, yep. It actually, like I say, I may have, the actual booklet itself looks
Okay.
exactly like that. Like I said, this would give it a more professional image. We handed these out at the trade fair last year. It gives the community, it lets them know what our ordinance department actually does. It answers the questions. Like I said, I've had positive feedback from many of the people in the community that have come in and received these because they had no idea. And like I said, educating the community is what we're trying to do here.
Mr. Montroy?
Do you have a ballpark of how many you handed out at the trade fair and how many you've handed out, like, for people coming in? Do you have any idea, like, how many you've done of that?
Well, at the trade fair, I can tell you, we handed out roughly about 300 copies of that for the first year. And overall, right now, we're probably up to about 600 or 800.
Okay,
Honestly, I think he should be ordering more than what he is.
okay.
You know, I mean, it's just something we'll probably utilize for years to come. If it were me, I would get a better price on, 1,500 of them. I mean, what is this one for? 500, right?
Yeah, well,
I mean,
put it at
500 might get us through a year.
my thing was I put it at 500 because I want to see before we go out and spend the money above and beyond what they're going to look like at 500 and see what we do. I mean, obviously, if they turn out really nice like we're hoping, and then we would actually want more, obviously. And like I said, it's something that Bedford Township can continue to use.
Ms. Tinnery?
We could continue to use, and I'm sure we will, but to order more than 500 at this point, we're changing ordinances all the time. So I'm concerned about having something printed that is out of date before we get rid of them all. So I think we should go in. Maybe we could get a better price with a larger quantity, but I think that we should stick with the 500 in the beginning.
Mr. Steiner?
And I was going to go the same direction there. The one thing I will say, I do see on the back, it's handwritten, 2019. It looks like it, I'm assuming it says REV.
Well, yeah, that was my note to myself. Sorry about that. I put that on there because it was revised. There was a second floor. I wanted to keep track of it. We were originally in there, it said, come up on the second floor. We've obviously moved down to the first floor. So I revised it so I wouldn't get the two mixed up and hand it to the guy down there and have him print it up and have second floor mounted on there. And also, we added the Save Our Seniors program, which was one of the things that was new this year. So that was what that was. You can.
No, I don't want to disregard that.
Okay.
Actually, I would like to see us do something like that to show the date that it was printed. So if there is another one that comes out, it might look identical.
Okay.
But if you see that, oh, well, this says 2019, and then in 2020, there's a different one, you got a 2020, oh, well, this is the old one, here's the new one. Granted, the general ordinances probably aren't going to change much, but you never know, and you might end up adding something. So
Correct.
I would like to see just a revision date or revision number as well, like revision 1, 2019, or something like that.
Okay,
And that shouldn't cost any more.
No, I don't think so.
any more questions? Ms.
I have
Tinnery?
a question of the treasurer, and it's the clerk, but the treasurer or the clerk, whichever would want to answer. I'm thinking that we don't want to deplete our ordinance department budget, and I don't know how much is left in there, but I would, the mention was made of community promotions and ordinance department. Since this is predominantly community promotions and it doesn't really change anything in our ordinance department, I would ask that half of it be taken out of community promotions and half out of the ordinance department.
Why don't we just take it all out of community promotions?
Because we need community promotions too. If you want to make your recommendation, you go ahead. I'll make
Make
it
a
mine.
recommendation that all of it comes out of there?
Well,
Unless
Mr.
you're going to up
Treasurer-
his budget this year.
Let's look at the number, see what Paul's looking already.
Oh, he's looking.
Yep, the CPA's looking.
He's prepared.
I kind of agree with you, Paul, that it probably should be taken all out of one spot because it does benefit more than just the ordinance department.
Right.
We do the same thing with software. Most of it gets charged into our software account rather than stratified into the various funds, although you could make a case either way on software. But, you know, I think it's a good idea. I could care less where it comes from as long as we get it done. So,
Well, I just want to give that direction to our finance director. Okay, well, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I would like to move that we that we approve the resident guide booklet being published for 500 copies with help printers in the hard stock cover. And I would like to have that charged to the Community Promotions Fund.
A second.
Motion supported by Mr. Steiner. Discussion?
Mr. Supervisor? I would just like to, I mean, I know we talked, but I'd just like to make sure we had that, like we said, the revision number 1 in 2019.
That works.
Okay. Would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Tinneberry?
Yes.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni.
Aye, and the motion passed 6-0. Item 6B, request for approval to adopt a new blight ordinance. Supervisor Cecil?
Again, as part of my job, I'm reviewing the ordinances within the ordinance department and through the township here. And a lot of our ordinances are either outdated or we get people that are always asking questions because in some cases, they're vague. I don't know. I've had to give people answers because some of them I realize are vague because of the way they're written. But a lot of times we get questions like, why can't I do this? And some of the answers that we have to respond back to is our ordinance says, well, if it doesn't say you can, then you can't. Of course, the citizens say, well, if it doesn't say you can't, why can't I? So as we review these and look at these, the blight ordinance came up, and there was some laxed language in some of the stuff that the old blight ordinance had. And we were operating out of a couple different things. We were operating out of the property maintenance code, the International Property Maintenance Code for some things. And then if we had to go to court, we would have to write them under a blight thing, take it to the legal department. The legal department then would have to take it up to the court. I looked at some of the other communities, Erie Township, Ida, some of these other locations, and reviewed their ordinances that they had. And the law office that we currently use wrote the ordinances for Erie Township and Ida, which is almost identical or very similar to the one that I'm asking you guys to approve tonight. And what this does is it streamlines. We're not operating out of two books. The language is very plain, and it just makes it easier for us to enforce. And one of the problems with enforcement, I'm going to tell you right now, under the old ordinance, what we were ended up doing in some cases, and these are repeated cases, so you understand, well, I'm not talking about the people that are first-time offenders here. I'm talking about repeat offenders. We would get people that are so familiar with this ordinance that we originally had that we would send them out a notice. They knew they had 60 days on this particular ordinance. They would wait till the 59th day, okay, to start doing anything on their property because they're stubborn that way. The problem is that the citizens that are affected by this blight, whether it's trash, garbage, or whatever, they're contacting us every day wondering why nothing's being done, and my hands are tied. When we do go to the legal department, there is obviously time involved there. I have currently 4 cases that we have been working on since last September and October that we're still waiting to get adjudicated through the court system. So this is a long period of time that these people, that are citizens that are complaining about legitimate blight complaints, are having to wait. And then what happens is he cleans it up, and then 30 days later, we're going back to the same place. The time frame in this has been changed a little bit to expedite these types of situations. What I would remind you is that the ordinance department, our primary goal is compliance. We're not out to take people to court and spend township dollars and that, trying to punish people here. We're trying to get this resolved first. So if you're a first offender, you're going to get notified, no matter first offender or repeat offender. We're always sending you a notification in the mail, trying to meet with you to get these matters cleaned up. So we're working with you, but the only stipulation is now we have 10 days. So if I've got a repeat offender and he doesn't want to cooperate, at 10 days, I can issue a citation now. I can contact the legal department and we can move ahead to expedite the court issues, so we're not waiting 6 months down the road and you putting up with whatever it is that you have. I think it's important that the community, I see a lot of things on Facebook about the community, Paul Peroni being crucified because a certain ordinance, we have so many rules and regulations in the township. The laws that we have in the township, or ordinances, or building department regulations and things like that, are not necessarily here because we have a bunch of bad people living in the community and we're trying to punish them. They're here to protect the property rights that you have spent your money on, so that people next to you aren't, if you build a $300,000 home, you're not having somebody moving in next door that's opening up a junkyard and a parts plant, okay? So that's kind of what these ordinances are about. We don't have a police department in Bedford Township because people here are terrible. We have a police department because they're here to protect all of you and your property and the things that they do. So the ordinance department's the same way. These ordinances, we're reviewing them, updating them to address new issues, to streamline things, and to make them better for the community. And in some cases, some of them, like I said, we're still answering to, you know, if pigs get shot, chickens get eaten by dogs. I mean, this ordinance has been on the book since 1920. And we're trying to update these procedures and lock down things from what they used to be. So that's kind of what I do. That's kind of what the ordinance department does. And this is one of the ordinances, like I said, this blight ordinance, I think it was very well written. I commend Goldsmith and all of those that worked on this. They did an excellent job. Tom Graham wrote it. Him and I had several conversations about it, and I think Tom did a nice job too. So I would ask that the board tonight look at this and give its blessing.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Cecil?
I don't have any questions, but I did want to tell you publicly, thank you. I fired off an email with 3 or 4 questions, and you made it very clear in your time off, and I appreciate that. Anytime we're able to come in here with some additional information, it makes it a lot easier. So I just wanted to let you know in front of everybody, I really appreciate you taking time to do that.
You're welcome, sir.
I can make a motion.
Okay.
I'd like to move that we adopt the new blight ordinance, number 102, entitled Bedford Township Blight Ordinance, as presented.
Support.
Okay. Motion is supported by Mr. Clements. Discussion?
As noted in the document, it does replace the existing ordinance number 19.
Okay. Could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Tinnevery?
Yes?
Mr. Clemens?
All right.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni.
Aye. And the motion passed 6-0.
Thank you.
Damon, thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
Okay, item 6C. Chief, you made it just in time. 6C is a request for approval to purchase a 200-gallon Danco XL skid unit to outfit the new brush truck.
Good evening.
I take you got the fire put out?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Just in the nick of time. This is pretty straightforward. When we brought the brush truck to you a month or so ago, we discussed bringing back the equipment to outfit it. This is a pump in the skid unit, which is a pump to hold the water, the entire unit that goes in the back. We were pressed to get the truck ordered in time so we could have it for this spring, and said we'd be back to you with further bids as we moved along. So we're ready for the skid unit. It should essentially finish it up. We're still working on a lighting package, but the lighting package we'll bring back to you when we get the pricing back for that. Again, this is a little bit time sensitive, so we can get the skid unit ordered and address the lights as we get a little closer to a delivery date.
Is this the same truck that you were potentially maybe putting a plow on the front of it?
It could. It's heavy enough to if we decide to go that route.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Chief?
I have a quick one. How do the quotes work for like these types of things? Like, and I guess like I just quickly like pulled up some of this stuff like online, and I know like there's a lot of specs on like if I'll see something cheaper, and it's like I don't know if it has every single thing that these quotes are having. I just don't know, is that looked at as well for like buying like direct, like I looked at like danco.net, like direct from them instead of coming from these like third-party companies?
There would be no in this instance, sometimes we do get a break or we do buy direct, but in this instance, there's no benefit to buying direct because the gentleman that we buy from is licensed for the region, so he's the salesman for the region. So if we went through, if we tried to buy direct, we'd get the same pricing because the pricing comes from Danco, and it would work through the distributor here locally.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was like like they had warranties, like you had to go through like those kind of things to get warranties on them, or?
No, not necessarily. To back up and answer your question, though, we developed some specs, some general specs of what we were looking for. So the size of the tank, the size of the pump, the engine and things of that nature, how many reels we wanted on it. And then our goal and our intention has been to send out a very generic bid request. We don't want to be so specific that it's only proprietary to one manufacturer. We want to make sure that we're looking at some different manufacturers with each of the purchases.
Okay.
When we can. Now, this is an instance where we can. Sometimes we can't do that. For instance, with the life packs, the cardiac monitors, they're proprietary to one salesman. And
Well, that's what like I saw
and
for this
Jacqueline's.
one, like there's a couple different like engine models for like the different.
Correct. So the prices were based on the bid request that we sent out, which generally said 200-gallon tank, 2 reels, at least an 18 horsepower motor. Talked about the fuel, foam cell and things of that nature. So
Okay.
it's specific to what we asked for, yes, sir.
Okay, I was just curious.
Mr. Francis?
A 200-gallon tank is the size that you think would be best suited for our needs?
Yes, sir.
And the second question I've got is, I noticed in the quotation it mentioned that if installation was needed, it's an add-on. Do we have to have installation performed by them?
We will not. The unit is, it's the skid unit. It basically picks up by forks and slides into the back of the unit, and then it's secured down in the back of the truck. So installation will not be necessary.
Good, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? I look for a motion. Mr. Francis?
I move that we, based on the chief's recommendation, that we agree to purchase the 200-gallon Danco XL skid unit to outfit the, from R&R fire truck repair for a total cost of $15,547. And it would be used out of the equipment millage funds that we have had approved by the voters.
I'll second.
Okay, motion is supported by Mr. Steiner. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mrs. Tinneberry?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni.
Aye, and the motion passed 6-0. Item 6D, request for approval to purchase 12 sets of turnout gear from Dingy's Fire Company. Chief?
Yeah, this is part of our replacement plan, year in and year out. The goal has been to replace about 8 sets of turnout gear each year. The turnout gear, the NFPA recommendation that OSHA enforces is at 10 years it should be replaced. And instead of waiting until the 10th year, all of our turnout gear was purchased in 2011. Instead of waiting to 2021 and then having to incur 60 sets of turnout gear, we've opted to spread that out over a number of years and kind of break up the capital purchases. So this is in line with that. We've recognized quite a significant increase in our volunteers. So whereas we have been ordering 8 sets each year, we think that 12 would be prudent this year so that we can outfit the members and make sure that we have turnout gear for the new members coming in.
Okay, questions? Seeing none, I look for a motion. Mr. Montry?
So that is, I see that that's budgeted. That's not part of the millage though, correct?
It is, we've got 4 sets budgeted as part of the new apparatus and equipment millage, and we've got the other 8 sets that will come out of our.
Which is part of regular budget?
Correct.
Because that's what you're doing here, okay.
Correct, yep, year in and year out.
Mr. Steiner?
And just clarification, the math on it, just so everybody knows, the cover page says at a cost of $2263.95.
Correct.
But that's per
Per unit.
per unit. That's not for everything, so.
Correct.
The clarification on that, if you're ordering the 12 sets, it's $27,167.40. And I would make a motion that we approve the purchase of 12 sets of turnout gear at the total cost, as mentioned, $27,167.40. Portion of that coming out of the operating and millage fund, and the other out of the capital fund for fire department.
Support.
Okay.
Oh, and,
Motion.
sorry, it's also Gingy's Fire Company.
Okay, motion and supported by Mr. Clemens. Discussion, Ms. Tinneberry?
Well, this might sound picky, but when you get 13 instead of 12, you save like $19 a unit. So why not get 13? You're going to use it some point in time. I don't know, it just seems to me. We need 12, but you get one more and you save a bunch of money.
Chief? Is that a friendly amendment to the motion?
No, I don't know yet. I mean,
Chief, how
maybe there's a
size
reason.
specific is turnout gear?
We-
What?
We,
Size specific.
yeah, it's a great point. We need more equipment. This is a bigger order than we normally have, so I suppose it stands to reason that ordering another set that we're going to need would save us some money.
Well, $240 roughly, right?
Right.
$20, I mean, it's on 2,000.
You're spending an extra 2 grand.
$2,263 a unit, I mean, you'd save $240 on the next one, which it's
If you shop at
$240.
Aldi's, you get that kind of thinking.
I,
If you don't buy it, you save 27 grand.
Amen.
What's the
If,
difference?
if our budget could sustain another set of turnout gear this year out of our uniform, out of the budget request that we have, assuming that it's approved.
Well,
coming up.
I'm not saying you should, I'm just asking the question.
It's 12 or 13 sets, either would serve us well, ma'am, and our budget can sustain either.
Okay. I think you're going to get one more than you're counting on anyway, so. It's a friendly amendment if that's what everybody else agrees to.
Mr. Steiner, would you accept the friendly amendment?
You don't have to.
Oh, he's going on his calculator.
I'll accept the friendly amendment.
I'll support.
Okay, motion is supported by Mr. Clemens. Discussion, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mrs. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 6-0. Item 6E, update on the EMS report, Chief?
Yes, sir, I'll try and keep it brief. Through the last year, the board had asked and requested that we come back with an update for you as far as the EMS service and the evolution of the EMS service. Being that we just closed out 2018, I thought it would be an appropriate time to give you a quick overview in case you had any questions. Currently, personnel-wise, we have 9 paramedics on staff. 3 of them are trained to a critical care or a MICU level. We've got 35 EMTs right now, and 4 of those EMTs are in paramedic school. So our hope is it will be over a dozen paramedics within the next year or so in the department. Our fleet has been upgraded. We're up to 6 licensed, either advanced life support or basic life support units now, 3 of which are advanced life support. So whereas traditionally in years past, when we took second or even third calls, we may be relying on a fire engine that didn't have the necessary supplies on it to deliver care, we're now able to handle multiple calls at the same time and still deliver the same level of service, regardless of which station or which district it is in, and without any consideration of the time of day. So we've upgraded that as well. Clearly, you understand, and we know that we're providing 24/7 advanced life support service now. We're also approved to provide that service, and we're licensed through the state for both Lenawee County and Monroe County. Now, we went ahead and we licensed Lenawee County so that we could do a good job with mutual aid agreements or mutual aid requests that we may have. It was just going a little bit above and beyond. We could have still provided mutual aid into Lenawee County, but without that licensing, but we thought it would be prudent to get the dual licensure level. So we upgraded that in 2018 as well. As far as response data, we had 1,904 EMS calls And about 15% of the time, we are taking multiple calls in 2018. So when we say we need multiple licensed vehicles in different districts, it's because oftentimes we're taking a second call at the same time the first one is already out, or we haven't completed the first one yet. Our response times continue to be good. Our average response time is 6 minutes and 8 seconds for a priority call, and we've split out our response times between when it's considered a priority. The Monroe County's dispatch prioritizes based on the call, whether it's a priority or not, and we respond with our lights and sirens or driving normally based on that prioritization. So for the calls that dispatch is determining are an emergency, when they get the call in from the time of dispatch, we're on scene 6 minutes and 8 seconds on average. The fractile time, we look just as closely, or actually more closely, at what we would call our fractile times for our responses. Essentially, when we say we're on scene in 6 minutes, or our average on scene time is 6 minutes, that would lend one to believe that for every time we were on scene in 2 minutes, we were on scene in 10 or something like that. So the fractile time gives us a little better indicator of what we're doing. And our fractile times, we've been tracking closely. Now, in 2018, we were on scene in less than 8 minutes from dispatch, 84% of the time. It's well above the national average, so we're pretty happy with the trend, and we think that that's going to continue with the additional staffing that we added at the end of 2018. So just some real quick data also, and then I'll field any questions. We've got to understand as well that not only are we providing the service, and the times that we're having are working out pretty well, but Monroe Community Ambulance is contractually obligated to be on scene of all priority calls in the township within 10 minutes, 90% of the time, and they're consistently meeting that mark as well. So there are times, especially with second and third calls, when we might fall out of the 6 or the 8 minute mark, but we've still provided good level of care to our residents because Monroe Community Ambulance is on scene as well, or has been on scene before us. So the combination of the two means we're well above 90% of the time that we're reaching our residents quickly when they have an emergency. In 2018, we had 26 transports. Now, we would transport patients as a secondary service to Monroe Community Ambulance. If the system was overloaded, meaning that the county had so many calls that they had taken another call either in Bedford or elsewhere, and we were backing them up. Sometimes if there are multiple victims, like from an accident or a crash scene, and there wasn't another ambulance that was close by, we'll provide a transport. Or occasionally when there's just a critical patient that we arrive on scene for, that the determination is made that it's important to start moving towards the hospital and not wait for Monroe Community Ambulance to get on scene. So it was 26 times in 2018, and we know we contracted with AccuMed about a year ago. We've recovered from the insurance companies right around $5,000 in 2018, actually a little over $5,000 in cost recovery to help offset the costs of the equipment, the supplies, and things like that. So we're working well as far as that goes. As far as 2019 goes, we're going to continue improving our response times. We're moving to a paperless reporting system. We're very close to actually launching a paperless reporting system so that everything will be cloud-based. Gives us a little better level of protection as far as the patient reports and things of that nature. We're enhancing our field training program, so we're just about to launch a new training program for all of our EMTs that are in training. We're really excited to try and develop the next generation of EMTs that were better off than we were when we came in by getting them a really, really great field training program. So we're launching that, and then we're going to continue developing some mutual aid agreements throughout the county and out the region.
And just a reminder for the residents that the fire department's gone from BLS, basic life support, to ALS, advanced life support. So now when they arrive on scene and MCA is not going to be there for 5 more minutes, they can perform advanced life support, which can save people's lives.
Correct.
So it's,
and even when they are on scene, for critical patients, an extra paramedic on scene and extra EMTs on scene are invaluable sometimes. So I think that we are very, very proud of the service we're delivering and the level of service that we're delivering and the way that the system has evolved in the last 12 months or so. It's really promising.
and the partnership with Monroe County Ambulances, if they're in Dundee and our ambulance arrives, they're going to take you to the hospital. They're going to be 15 minutes till they get there.
Sure.
So that's the advantage we have now with our new program we have in place is we can get you to the hospital and perform advanced life support. So it's
Right.
totally changed the department.
Yeah, generally speaking, our policy is we arrive on scene and we assess the patient. After we've assessed the patient to determine the level of distress or the level of need, we check on the response time or the location of the MCE unit, and then we make a determination whether the patient's stable, and stable enough, and/or whether we're going to initiate care on the scene. So sometimes, even if MCE unit was responding from far away, sometimes we're doing all kinds of basic and advanced level care, and by the time we get all the care done and get the patient package ready to go, they're arriving on scene to initiate and take care of the transport. So the system is working as well or probably better than we envisioned when we set out a year ago.
Questions for Chief?
Well, just to be clear, we're still operating in a supplementary manner
That's correct.
and not replacing MCA. It's supplementing their services to provide a higher level to all our residents. which is
Correct.
Great.
Yeah, yeah, we feel like we're supplementing and really in a supportive role of them.
Okay, no more questions? Chief, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks.
Okay, item 8A, request for approval of voucher for payment. Mr. Francis?
If my voice holds up, I'd like to read this. I move that we approve vouchers in the amount from the general fund in the amount of $223,061.13, from the fire district fund, $24,893.66, from the police millage fund, $96,892, from the park fund, $1,173.70, from the library fund, $500.37, from the Lewiston Estates Special Assessment District Fund, $640, from the Downtown Development Authority Fund, $1,137.16, from the Sewer O&M Fund, $5,788.01, and from the Trust and Agency Fund, $394, for a grand total of $354,480.03.
Okay, motion supported by Mr. Clements. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mrs. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 6-0. Item 8B, request for a fee waiver of the Board of Zoning Appeals fees for the farmer's market. Is there a representative here for the farmer's market tonight? Okay, if not, we go through this every year with the farmer's market. We waive the fees for the Board of Zoning Appeals. Unfortunately, the new ordinance isn't quite done yet to kind of change the way we're doing this with festivals and farmer's markets, so they'll have to go through this process. So they'd like to get their fees waived. Mr. Steiner?
I'm going to make a motion, but Mr. Peroni, if you would just check with planning and see when they expect us, because we've talked about this one for quite some time. And I know they're busy, but this is one that's been years. trying to get
It
this
should be
right.
about another month and a half, 2 months, and they'll be done with it.
So I make motion to approve the BZA fee waiver of the $275, and it will be for the Board of Zoning Appeals on March 4th, 2019 meeting.
Support.
Motion is supported by Ms. Tinneberry. Discussion?
I have,
Ms. Tinneberry?
I would just like to have the farmer's market give some kind of a report in the future, whatever, closer to spring or whatever, to know, if they're growing, if they're maintaining,
I can give you a report.
well, not
Want me
right
to give you a
now.
report right now?
No, because I
one?
don't want you to lengthen the meeting.
Okay.
It's not on the agenda.
I mean, it would be nice to have them come in. They do come to the BZA, because I'm on the BZA also. They do give us an update, but I'll mention that at the BZA meeting as well, Nancy.
Well, if Paul can do it.
Well, I mean, I'm going to talk right to the people right
Okay,
on that
good.
date.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, motion is supported. Discussion? Can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 6-0. Item 8C, request for approval to purchase from Habitat Security and install key cards on Bedford Township department doors. I could take this. I'm looking to approve to install 6 key cards, 1 for each department door, if the board chooses. We should, at a minimum, install key cards in the clerk's and the treasurer's office. This came about in the last few months. There's a couple individuals that feel the need that they can just walk through township doors that have money and personal information, and this would be an easy way to stop that because you'd have to use a physical key card to get through the doors. So you see the bill at $73.66. I hate seeing us spend that kind of money, but security's very important here for your documents and your tax dollars. But if we only want 2 doors, whatever he said, divide that by the 6, that $73.66. Same thing with the $45 a month, $49 a month monitor. He said divide that number by 6 as well, and that would be the monitoring fee.
Mr.
So-
Supervisor, in looking through this, if this is a safety issue for the employees at Town Hall, I think that's one conversation. If this all is being done to address a person or 2 people, I think it takes on an entirely different spin. Outside of these couple of incidents, have there been any other incidents or concerns as far as general safety to the building?
There's been a few times people walk back through the planning department, and there's plans laying out that, you know, people shouldn't see, you know, until they're public. There's been other situations. Now, as far as security, if somebody wants to get an employee, they're gonna jump the counter.
Right.
I mean, this isn't gonna stop somebody from a security threat, but as far as giving a barrier so somebody just doesn't walk through a door, you know, it'll definitely prevent that. Now, can you lock your doors? Yes, but, you know,
Yeah, it's not conducive to
it's
business.
not, you know, I think what we could do is start with the 2 where we know it's an issue. I don't know, I've only been at Township Hall for 2 years, so I mean, I don't know, in the past, people have been here a long time, probably. Ms. Tinderberg?
I've been here a long time, and as long as I've been around, there was never an incident that was documented. You didn't finish your sentence there. You both seem to understand why you can't just lock your door. Can't we have a door that's locked and you can use a key to get in?
Sure, you can, but it's not happening.
It's not what?
I mean, it's
Not
easy,
every
somebody
employee
walks
has a
in,
key.
a key card or a key.
But no, she's saying key.
Oh, yeah, not
not
every
every
employee
employee has
has
a
the
key.
master key. We'd have to get them, we could get them made.
Well, but
But-
you don't want to do that because then you've got a key control access issue. That's a lot of keys.
Well, this is a lot of money
Right.
for a key card. So, I mean, what do you mean you don't have to have a master key? I work in an office where there's a master key for the vault and the front door, and then everybody else has their office keys.
Paul, does your key take a master key, or does it take do you have an individual key for your offices?
My office or?
Not your
the
office
outside?
directly, but your
I think it's just a
treasurer-
regular key. Doesn't
Just a
take
regular
master.
key, so.
When I was here in the old building, that's no longer here, we had a master key for the top 3 officials, full-time officials, and everybody else had just a regular key. It's a lot cheaper than this. And the person who does the locks or repairs the locks, or it's not Habitech, it's some other company. I just think that, you know, this is too rash for what has occurred recently and has not been in the history of the Township Hall. And like you said, I mean, I could even get over the counter.
No, I doubt that.
I'll show you.
You get a running start, you can make it.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're not
Your new hip.
protecting anything. Yeah, I'll get on the other hip. I'm just saying, I just think this goes way beyond the need.
I could tell you this, it's been happening since I've been here in office full-time. It just didn't start when I got here. It's been going on for probably a long time.
Okay? I kind of think it's been happening since you've been here.
Well,
Anyway, my point is, this is way too this is way too much money for the incidents that we have been given, and I think we need to find I mean, if you're going to carry your key card when you go to get a coffee or the restroom, you can carry a key.
The bottom line is, it's a resolution to fix the problem. If we
Yeah.
don't want to approve it, let's not approve it, and we'll move on. And the clerks and the treasurers are going to have to do something a little bit more to stop people from walking back there.
Okay,
'Cause
but
I
this is
walked
it.
back there the other day, and Cindy Baum is counting money, a lot of it, and I would like more security measures in place, rather than somebody that can just walk back there.
I understand, but we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater either. I mean, if there's a problem, we could fix the problem. This just isn't the only solution to fix the problem, I wouldn't think.
Okay, well, any other suggestions, let's do it. But as far as employees leave the doors multiple times a day, I mean, it's just gonna be one of them things, they're gonna have to carry their key on them, But I don't know,
They'll have to carry their key card anyway.
yeah. But they
Can I
can-
make a suggestion? Why don't we not do this right now and try something else, like maybe getting a sign made and put on all the outside doors? They already say staff only. If it's an issue, just lock the darn door for a few days and put maybe a sign that people recognize as being new, say, please, make eye contact or something, please be invited in, rather than just charge in, see if that works. It might. Because like you said, you can put all the locks on you want, but if somebody's gonna rob you, they're gonna jump that counter in a heartbeat.
No, I don't have a problem with my door,
yeah.
it says welcome. Your guys' doors are totally different than mine.
And they're not locked. But
That
they
should be the
can be
first
locked,
step.
because
Yeah,
they
they
do
should
have
be
locks
locked.
on them. So I would suggest that we try that approach and see what happens. If it doesn't work, well, we can always step it up.
Okay. Any other comments or suggestions?
Tell Habitat to make that 7 a 1, like it looks like. We'll think about it.
Huh?
I thought that was a 1. I was gonna ask.
Gee.
Is that a 1 or a 7?
It's a 7.
Yeah, tell them to make it a 1, we'll think about it.
Call them and tell them. Work them, Craigie.
I'll call 'em.
Okay.
Yeah, they wanted 1,227.60 per key reader, so
Okay. I look for a motion.
I move that we do not approve the Habitat Security Key Card installation bid for installing new key cards, 6 key cards on each department door.
I'll second.
Okay, motion is supported. Discussion? I personally feel like the doors can be locked now, and they're not being locked. And I feel like the information and the things that are behind those doors, having a key card is a lot different than having to worry about employees locking the door back and forth. It automatically locks with the key card. And I think for the $1,500 it would cost, I think it's well worth it, in my opinion, so.
Well, if that's a friendly amendment, I would include that in my motion, that the employees be required to lock the door.
Mr. Steiner, do you accept that friendly amendment?
Sure.
Okay, problem solved. Okay, could you
Now
call the
you
roll,
lost
please?
my vote. I don't want to mandate that we lock the doors unless it's a problem.
Do you think it's a problem, somebody walking back?
Do I? No, I do not.
Well, you said it was last meeting, so you changed your mind?
No, I'm saying some people do come in, but I think it can be solved in a heck of a lot easier and less expensive way. That's all I'm trying to say.
But there's
If it
some
doesn't
people
work-
that come in without permission.
Well, what's permission?
Somebody walking into the building and walking through your door without asking?
I have observed that
And I've
all-
seen that many times.
Well, there's usually eye contact made. It's just common courtesy. You don't just barge in on anything,
Well-
especially when it's staff only on the door.
There's a couple individuals that don't have common courtesy, so.
Let's try something different.
All right.
If you're going to have it in to mandate that they lock the doors, I'd think about voting against it, because I'm against that. That's a pain in the, never mind.
That's why I say voting for this isn't going to work, Ms. Stenberry. So, could you call the roll, please?
What are we voting on?
Wait, what are we voting on?
Well, she made a friendly amendment. Mr. Steiner accepted it. Could you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
No.
Mr. Clemmons?
Aye.
Mr. Francis,
No.
and Mr. Peroni.
No. I would like to make a motion that we approve 2 key
Wait,
cards.
you didn't rule on the motion.
Okay, the motion has failed.
On a
3 to 3.
3 to 3. Oh, shoot.
3 to 3. We have
3 to 3, what do we have here? Let me
4,
figure this
6.
out again.
Oh, yeah, 3 to 3, right.
3-3. So the motion failed.
Thank you, just wanted you to
Okay.
rule on the motion.
I'd like to make a motion now that we approve 2 key card purchases for the clerk's department and for the treasurer's department. Mr. Steiner, help me out. What's the amount?
$1,227.60 per door.
Okay,
Plus 49 bucks a month.
I was
divided
gonna
by,
say, plus you
divided
guys'
by,
monitoring fee.
okay, that would be divided by 6 if we only went with 1. So that would be about $13 a month compared.
Does that, question, does that, it says service plan to commence 1 year from date of install.
$1,633 a month.
Does that, what is that saying? Is that saying that the service plan doesn't start for a year?
Yes,
So you don't pay that 49?
that's what it looks like it says. Service plan to commence 1 year from date of install. I'll have to look into that further, but
That, to me, that's a service plan. That's not a monitoring fee.
it says service plan next to the $49, but
Yeah, so
you
that-
could be right.
So that makes it questionable because the 49 does say Premier Service Plan, which to me, that is to make sure the equipment is serviced. So do we show a monthly fee?
He told me the $49 was the monthly fee to monitor it.
Why do we have to monitor it? I mean, what are we going to do with that monitoring data?
Are you able to like read whose cards are like in and out? That's the only thing I can think, but
I mean, we pay him to monitor the ones we have here now.
But the ones we have monitored now, again, does it say whose card it is?
Yeah. you
Okay,
can-
'cause I know
they can-
some
they
do
can-
and some
They
don't.
can tell. They can tell who's coming and going. Ms. Tinneberry?
Well, 2 questions. One is, who gets the 2 keys? Because the treasurer and the clerk aren't always here for many various
What?
different reasons.
Everybody would get a
So-
key. It'd be the same key card as everybody gets. All employees with a key card could access their door. It's just that
Be
thing
these-
that goes on the outside of the door
these
that you
keys.
hit it and you go in.
Yeah, I know what they are. Okay, so remind me again what problem we're solving?
Anybody walking through the doors without being invited back. To me, it's a security issue too, on top of it.
To me, it doesn't solve a security issue when you tell me that Cindy was sitting there counting money, and if somebody
And
comes
I
to the
walked in and-
counter, if somebody comes to the counter, the gun is shown, hand me the money, and she gets up and hands them the money. Nobody's gonna, there's no, if somebody wants to steal money from the treasurer's department, they're not going to walk through the door. I just don't see how that's solving an issue, for one. And okay, so everyone has a key to the clerk's and the treasurer's office. That's what you're saying?
Their key card would work for their door, every employee at the township. Whoever has the key card, like he just showed you, would be able to access their door, like
They
that.
already have one. Everybody
Here's
has one of
mine.
those.
Yeah,
Be the same
with
thing, same code.
I know, I get that. I have one myself.
Okay.
I don't see it solving a problem.
did we have a support to the motion? That's your alarm, Paul, going off in the parking lot.
I don't think it's mine.
Okay. I call the question, we have a support for the motion?
I didn't hear any sort.
I didn't hear
I
one.
didn't-
Okay, well, I made the motion to purchase 2 of them. That's your alarm.
No, it didn't. Might be yours.
There it goes.
if that passes, if you pass that, I'll make a motion without mandating locked doors. I believe that'll pass.
That can't pass. There's the motion on the floor that has not been seconded, so it dies for lack of a second.
Okay, so
But I can't rule that, the supervisor needs.
we have no support to the motion then? Okay, seeing none. Motion failed.
Okay, can I make a motion?
Sure.
I'll make a motion to pass on this without mandating locking doors. So the original motion without the friendly amendment.
Support.
Tell me what the original motion was, to buy two?
We're just, no, nothing.
Buy nothing?
That we
Yeah,
deny this,
do nothing.
Just,
that
Oh, okay.
we deny this bid from Habtech.
okay, do we have a support? We have a motion and support?
Nancy, second.
Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Who second?
Ms.
Nancy.
Tinnever.
Ms. Tinnery?
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Mrs. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye, I think.
And Mr. Peroni?
Aye. I just think it's funny, that last meeting, we all talk about how there's an issue, but then we don't want to solve the problem, so. Okay, moving on. Item 8C, or 8D. Request for approval of the yard waste service agreement with the Mulch King. Andrew, come on up. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm Andrew Nitz, owner of the Mulch King, 110 Smith Road.
Okay, we have before us a contract with Mulch King to allow our residents from December 15th to March 15th, or I'm sorry, from March 15th to December 15th, that would allow all of our residents in Bedford to drop off yard waste, grass, sticks, debris,
Correct.
leaves, okay, for those 9 months.
Correct.
We have looked at other options, you know, and if you want to explain, get into the explanation of why you're charging us now, because, you know we started a certain way, but now, you know, you've explained it in a way to where you're trying to limit the amount of you're taking in.
Yeah,
You're almost
it's not
taking
so
in too
much taking in as that the popularity of the facility or use of the facility is such that it's coming in way faster than we can process it. So, and then due to some actual, I guess, suggestions from MDEQ that has been there and done a few inspections themselves, that they said we should start charging everybody a lot more than what I was proposing that we do. What I was proposing that we do, if we're going to work together, is just to help with the processing costs of all the actual yard waste debris that's being brought into the facility. So if it comes in faster than we can process it, then we can only take in so much per acre. Then we'd have to close down until we could process it all to begin with, which would then kind of get a confusing scenario for the residents of Bedford. And then, so say one time they can come and then they can't for so long. So what I would like to do is work with the township to where we can continue to bring everything in and then help me process it as fast as it is coming in. Just like in the couple months we worked together this past fall, we brought in a brush pile that's the size of this building. And all of that would have been getting burned or thrown into the landfill or your ditches out in front of your houses. So I think it's a huge benefit to the community. It's just, like I said, again, it's the popularity has been such that I think the entire idea is working 10 times better or faster than we thought it actually would.
And just to give a little bit of background, we, up until last year, had dumpsters behind the township hall seasonally during the spring and during the fall, and it came to about $16,000. So we wouldn't be saving. But the dumpsters, that doesn't include the time Pat Thatcher had to go out there with a backhoe and drive it down, you know,
Right.
Dean Road and smash it down, you know, on the weekends or whenever, you know, and it would be an absolute mess back there. So, and that was going into the landfills as well.
Yeah. And then the idea too is that everything that is brought in, we're making a renewable product out of it, but we've literally only been open for that basically one whole year. So we haven't even processed enough to start selling it back to the community. And plus we missed out on, we didn't have the material as much in the spring to be able to make it to sell it back when most everybody does their landscaping services in the spring, you know, or early summer months. So even though we were selling quite a bit of it back out, I think we could have gotten rid of 10 times the amount of material that had come in, which I'm hoping we will do this spring, which would help out as well, which is why I'm not asking for anything kind of outrageous money like other townships and stuff spend on this kind of stuff. It's just, I want us to all work together, but continue the benefits. Like, I wish the fire chief and Officer Cecil didn't leave, because we could have asked their input on how much time and money maybe we saved them from having to go out and look at people burning whatever, whenever, wherever.
Well, I can tell you this, that we've had a number of people call in thanking us because the burning is down. We've put evening shift ordinance officers out there to make sure people are following the ordinances. And we're putting out multiple illegal burns. And the fire department's appreciative because we've put on an evening shift guy, so now they're not getting called out, with their apparatus to a scene to put out an illegal burn. But we don't want to, we're not trying to take away people's burning. We're just simply saying, here's another option. Here's an easy out that's free, because we did get inundated with phone calls when the residents were getting charged. And they were not happy. This is something that they're used to, and they've been getting it for a number of years. And I feel like at that money, we're encouraging them to do it. I think if we let this go and we didn't pick up the $16,000, I think you'd see a lot more people burning.
Yeah, some people are.
So this is encouraging our residents to recycle and take their stuff to the yard waste, so.
We've had people that have come in too that thank us that, like I said, they had to get a new roof because the neighbor caught their roof, shingles on fire, or burned them because they were, or their siding because they were burning in their backyard, a giant brush pile on the weekend or whatever. So I think there's a lot more benefits and cost, maybe savings or money that's getting put back into the community, that it would be a better benefit that we all keep working together.
Questions for Andrew?
I got one.
Mr. Francis?
I think you mentioned that, was it DEQ has a limit on how much material you can have on site?
Correct.
Are you anywhere close to that?
So with what the acres that are considered developed that have where I can store the actual composting material they count. So like the leaves or the grass is basically what they count as composting, or the brush once it's been chipped up, because then it can decompose. The brush sitting as itself, they don't consider compost material as of right now. So with the leaf pile that's there, the rows of compost or material that's being composted that we brought in from this last season, we could probably take in another 15,000 cubic yards before we would be at their max capacity. So I have plans this year to expand the facility again more than what we got done in the last season. So as those acres grow, we can take in more and more and more. But right now with what's there, it would be like one more fall leaf season and it would be filled.
I was going to say 15,000 doesn't sound like a lot.
Yeah, like we brought in, like I said, last year was 25,000 cubic yards between the brush and the leaves. That's not even really including the grass, because the grass decomposes so fast.
Ms. Tinkerberry?
Okay, so first of all, are you part of the Green New Deal?
No.
Okay, so we're
I
not
haven't been
gonna,
approached
we're
by
not
that
gonna
yet.
go into some kind of a start here
yeah.
and move, okay.
Right.
Just wanted to clarify that because it makes me nervous. Two questions. How do you determine that they're Bedford residents?
So we check identification when everyone comes in.
What kind, I mean?
So driver's license, if for some reason they're driving there and they don't have a driver's license, then we usually tell them to bring a utility bill, something with their name and address on it.
They're driving there and they don't have a driver's
Yeah,
license.
it's actually happened. It's
Do you-
very strange, but
Do you check the license plate?
to make sure it's a Michigan plate. No, just their IDs themselves, because several people have come in that we've found that they have a Ohio license plate, but their driver's license is Michigan, and they'll say it's because their insurance, they're cutting corners to save money on the insurance, so they have a rental property there that they claim as their residence, and they
Okay.
live here. So it's
My-
amazing the things that we've heard in the last year. It's,
My issue
To save
is
salaries.
that very same
Oh,
thing.
they're saving more than $1.
yeah.
My issue is
Thousand.
the factor, the non-truthful factor, because I have heard, and these are rumors, and I don't know, I don't camp out there and make sure who they are, but without maybe a tax bill for the property that they're, I don't know how you can keep people who do this for a living and go around and collect people's yard waste, or friends helping friends. I don't know, and I certainly
Yeah.
am totally for this.
Sure.
You know, my husband uses it constantly. In fact, sometimes he's gone way too long to think that he's just going to the dump or whatever, but he, you know, I think it's a very good thing, and I want the burning to be reduced, you know, everything that this provides. But I also have heard stories about friends getting their stuff from their friends in another township or some other place and coming and dumping, and if Bedford taxpayers are paying for it, I want it to be for Bedford taxpayers, and I don't want the capacity used up for friends helping friends or somebody doing this as a business and
Like I
dumping.
said, we asked for IDs, and I know even personally, the amount of time I've spent up there, that I've seen a car or a truck come in, and it's two guys that say they've been working on their lawn, and this guy probably is from Luna Pier, and this guy is from Bedford, and he's the one showing his license. Without getting into, you know, their own privacy issues, I don't know how much more we can restrict that or regulate it on our end. Like, even asking for some of their utility bills or something was kind of uncomfortable, you know, I don't know how much we can push the envelope on that. But
Well,
I think 99% of it, because we are asking, is cut it way back from before, when it was free willy-nilly, everybody come in. We'd have 15 cars lined up, and then the first day we actually checked and said, you got to start showing your driver's license, 9 out of the 11 cars were from Ohio. And they show their Ohio license, and we say, all right, you can give me $5 or something or whatever. And it, like, within a week, it had changed to almost completely Samaria, Temperance, you know, Lambertville. You know, we
Okay.
still get quite a few people from Erie Township, but they know.
So you allow them to bring, but you charge them?
So if a commercial company was coming from out of town, yeah, we charge them, say it's, you know, $5 a cubic yard to bring in, which is more than enough to help the cost of processing whatever material they bring.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other board members? Greg?
What was the original agreement? Like, I was trying to look back on this and just kind of find out, like, exactly, was there an agreement? Was there anything of, like, why this was originally going to be, like, a free service or whatever?
No, originally I
It was
had
just kind of the business model?
Yeah, just the business model itself, when I came in and pitched it to the township originally, was, and the entire business model is still the same, it just didn't think it was gonna take off like it was, right? You know, you don't think that many people get excited about carrying bags of rotting grass around in their car, but you'd be really surprised how many people line up to come in there. So, the business model is that everybody here would bring stuff in, and when they would bring something in, they would see our finished products, and they would buy it back from us, you know? So say he came in his pickup truck and dumped 5 bags of grass or bush clippings from his landscaping, then he dumps that over here, and he drives over here, and I take a loader and put a scoop of mulch in his truck, and he's buying the material back, so that's the whole business model, right? But we've had 10,000 times the stuff come in, and because we really didn't get off the ground through the early spring, we had one time the amount of stuff going back out the door. So that is in effect of where we kind of had to change things around.
So how does this contract slow that down?
So we don't want to slow it down. What we want to do is keep it the same, if not growing, by working together. But what it'll do is it'll allow me to bring on some extra help, run the grinder longer, which
Okay.
you're running a grinder, it's $100 an hour in diesel fuel. You know, it gets to where the business model is losing money now, and that's not what any of us want to do as business owners. So we don't want to deter people from coming.
You need
by
to
any
keep
means.
up with the process.
Right.
That makes more sense. Okay.
Right, and if 90% of what's coming in is from Bedford Township, then if Bedford Township can work with us, then we can produce it faster, stay within those MDEQ guidelines, and make them happy, and then start selling the material back, which we hope will happen here in the next couple of months.
Andrew, I am getting a few calls about the corner. Are you planning to clean the corner up a little
So,
bit?
yeah, the brush that's on that corner and all those trees that we pushed down, that would have been done by now. Last year, there's a few people in the community, at least I'm pretty sure they live in the community, that are against the project. And so it seems like every couple of weeks, some other department or agency shows up and diverts my energy and monetary funds for capital improvement to dealing with this. Like, we had 22 inspections in the last year that were from the same, at least 2 people that I know of, maybe even a few other ones that I'm not sure of. Because unfortunately, in the state of Michigan, anybody in this room could say they had an issue with something with all of you and make it up for your house, and then the inspection has to be done. So they don't have to put their name to it. So I think the same handful of people have been trying to make it harder on everybody for one reason or another. I don't know why, because I don't know them personally. But it probably took 30% of my man hours that I could have devoted to other things, and about 40% of my budget for last year to make DEQ happy by moving this pile here, and make the Soil Erosion Commission happy by putting this extra drain over here, or the Drain Commission, or MDOT, or the Road Commission, and all the issues that have come up because of all of that. But we just have to deal with those things. So back to your original question, yeah, that pile was supposed to have been moved a long time ago, and it was planned. We just started grinding up part of the brush pile that was in the back. So when we get that finished off and we have an area for everyone to go to the back to drop their materials off, then I can start cleaning that front up. But yeah, it would have been done by now if some people would stay out of my rear end, for lack of a better term. For the
I feel
overall
your
position.
pain.
Yeah.
Okay, any more questions?
Is there a foreseeable end to like these types of contracts? Like, is there once you're caught up and we're kind of, okay, like this is our first year or so, or is this looking to be a long-term, that this is how this will be?
Don't have a definite answer for that. I would say it would be beneficial for all of us to keep going, but again, time would tell on the popularity. If it stays like this, then I would definitely like to keep working with the township till we get on somewhat of a level playing field or ground on the amount of material coming in. We can process it and sell it back out. So that's the key, is selling it back, which really by the end, this time next year, we'll have a much better handle on how that balances out. So,
Mr. Steiner?
So this would start March 15th, and this calls for an $8,000 payment up front on March 15, and then another $8,000 in 4 months. I mean, I agree, we've helped out the community, cut down on a lot of burning issues and smoke, and it's definitely visible. I'm just not comfortable with, $8,000 a payment and just preference, but I'd rather see this broken up, every little over 2 months at $4,000
Is that
a
something we
shot.
could do? Can we do
Instead of,
I'm sure
quarterlies?
we could work out that kind of stipulations on it.
So we just do 4 different payments of 4,000 each, and you'll be okay with that?
Yeah, I don't see why not, if that makes everybody a little bit more comfortable. So I don't plan on going anywhere, and the money's just going right back into the facility, so it's meant for capital improvements, like I said, to get that material processed so we can take in more.
Okay, no more questions. I look for a motion.
I'd like to move that we authorize, oops, I'm sorry, I got the wrong one. That we approve the contract, the yard waste agreement with Mulch King for composting materials to be delivered by Bedford Township residents at no cost, at a total cost of $16,000, divided over 4 equal payments of $4,000 each.
I'll second.
You want to put the date in there from December 15th to March 15th?
Sure, December 15th to March 15th, 2019 to 2020.
What was that, Nancy?
March 1st, March 15th to December 15th.
Yes.
Not December 15th to March.
Thank you,
That's right.
Nancy. Yes, I
Okay.
approve that, I agree.
We have a support? Okay, supported by Craig Monterey. I just want to say, with the residency, if you do have suspicion of somebody, call us, and maybe we could send ordinance over there to make sure, and we could maybe put a stop. If it's the same person that you have a suspicion about, call us and we'll come over there and take a look. Can we do that? that satisfy you, Ms. Tinneberry?
I would prefer to have a deputy go that has authority to do something, but whatever you say, Mr.
Oh,
Supervisor.
a deputy, call 911.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Montre?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni.
Aye, and the motion passed 6-0. Okay, item 8F, request for approval to share the costs associated with the proposed roundabout at the Jackman-Smith intersection with the Monroe County Road Commission. Barry Bushman, if you'd like to come on up. We've been working together on this for quite some time, along with Mr. Francis and our Roads Committee. This is something that I feel personally is needed in the township. We have an opportunity to capitalize on $600,000 of federal grant money that is only to be used at this specific location. We have a partnership that we're going to have with the Road Commission to split 50/50 the above cost. They agreed to $175,000, and then our portion would be the $175,000 that's left over. That is contingent upon quite a few things on the $175,000 on our end, one being the water line removal. Okay, that $45,000 of that $175 would come out of the water fund, and that's a rough, kind of a rough estimate on the removal. That $175 is contingent on the purchase of the Michigan Tavern, which I have a number in mind that I think, you know, we could get it for. They're asking 75, and, you know, I did tour the building. It's in rough shape. So, and that's contingent upon the removal of the building at $25,000, which I think is pretty high. So and that's at the end of the whole project, okay, we can sell the leftover property, which would be a decent-sized chunk. You know, so our share at the end of the day could be more close to $100,000. But we won't know till all these key factors play out. So, Barry, do you want to add anything to it about the design of it or any other?
You do have a couple examples. We've worked with the Road Commission, as you've indicated, over the past few months, and there are about 3 or 4 different iterations of the design. But basically, the design is set up to essentially utilize the space of the old tavern property and minimize any other right-of-way takes or easements required outside that area.
Anybody have any questions for Barry?
I don't know if it's for Barry. Why is the water line not part of the split with the county?
It is. They're paying $175, we're paying $175.
But I thought the water line was Bedford Township.
The water removal would come out of our fund. That's, you know, it's not gonna add to the $175. So the water line was within that $175. That's our share. The water, it would come out of the water fund, though. We have a water fund from tap-in fees. So out of our general fund, potentially, it would be 175 minus 45. Potentially, that would come out of our general fund.
Less any of the recovery on real estate, et cetera.
Yeah, and we get the building for 60 or 55, or it only costs us 10,000 to demo, you know. I've talked to Chief Massingill on, what?
The water line was intended to come out of the water fund.
Yeah, yeah.
And the 175, it was intended to be that the project cost could be as much as $950. So the 175 was including real estate right-of-way and the like.
Yeah.
So just as a clarification.
Lost my,
If it's required, that is. We're still looking into the possibility. The water line could be a lot less than the 45, too.
Yeah, this is the, okay.
Oh, I brought up, I talked to Chief Massingill about getting with the DEQ about the possibility of a controlled burn with the building, you know, for practice. But he said he'd look into it. So, I don't know nowadays.
Wait, how I'm reading this, it would say that it says total fees excluding water line relocation, which would be paid out of a separate fund, and then it breaks down the rest. So we'd be 175 plus 45 out of the fund, correct?
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
That's not the way we figured it in our meeting, was it, Paul?
I think it was.
The 175 plus the 45?
You know, we're dealing at this point with a moving target. We don't know if the total is a good number yet because we don't have bids. It's a best guesstimate based on the years of experience that Maddox Smith has in doing these projects. So we're reasonably sure, but you never know till you get the bid.
I guess the question would be why would the water line fee not be separate from the split with the township?
We had to fight for the 175 from them. They started out with, you know, 150, and we ended up getting them to 175 just to cover.
Was there a reason why that was excluded?
Probably
I'm, like,
because
curious. I have no
probably
idea
because
why
it's
would that
coming out
be
of the water
separate?
fund. Probably because it's coming out of the water fund.
It's not excluded, it's just not part of the 50-50 split between the township and the road commission. We carved that part out to get them to agree to a 50-50 split.
Okay.
Ms.
I guess
Tenneberry?
In a nutshell, that's really what it
That
was.
makes more sense. Okay.
Because the cost isn't going to go down unless the cost of relocating that is a lot less. We don't know that at this point. But sometimes getting the road commission to agree to a 50-50 split is difficult, even though it's their road, which we pointed out a couple of times. But I still think it's a good deal for us. It's a safety issue and not a cosmetic or a beautification project. I drive that at least twice a day, sometimes more. It is a safety issue. And the not bad part, but 50% of the traffic on Smith Road are Ohio plates. Zipping down Smith Road to miss the traffic lights, I guess, on Alexis. But
Ms. Tenneberry?
Well, this is a grant given by MDOT to the Monroe County Road Commission.
Correct.
That's correct, okay. Bedford Township didn't get this grant.
That's correct.
So I disagree with my colleague here on the board that I think it's a need. I don't drive it as much as he does, but I drive it considerably. And so I'm going to need some data to explain to me why we need this. So do you have accident data?
The Monroe County Road Commission, as part of their application to MDOT, for the application for the grant, had all the background data, the accident data, and the like to justify it. And that's how they obtained the $600,000 grant through competitive grant application.
But the grant application was specifically for roundabouts, am I correct?
Roundabout at that specific location.
Okay. Well, I mean, I know that the road commission was using that specific location, but the MDOT classifies their grants for different, like bridge, roundabout, whatever, big curve in the road, that we got a grant out there on Samaria Road to make that a stop and then a turn onto Secor and then a right turn. Maybe you weren't around then, I was around then. So I'm just saying that the classification was determined when they applied for the grant.
It was site-specific for that location based on the accident data, the safety data, and the like for that location. And they requested specifically that for a roundabout.
And did they not have any other locations in Monroe County besides Bedford Township? Or do you know?
Well, they do apply for grants locally. I mean, they did apply for another one up in Frenchtown Township at the same time, got a similar grant. It wasn't for a roundabout, but obviously, since I didn't, or the road commission applied for the grant.
Yeah.
When they choose a grant location, it's usually based on high accident location, high traffic data, et cetera. So they try to justify it. Certain other locations obviously wouldn't justify or merit that grant.
I do understand that, however, there's other fixes besides a roundabout for the same kind of criteria. There's other ways to solve a problem. For instance, we have a problem at Secor and Smith, and that has an accident, high, I don't know how high, how it compares to everything else, but it has quite a few accidents there and a lot of traffic delays, and I mean, it would be much easier to get road access or easements there than having to buy a broken down building, is my concern. I just don't see that we need this roundabout in Bedford. This is prime C1 property that we're trying to get an easement to make a roundabout that I'm not sure will solve the problem. I'm not an engineer, and I appreciate your expertise, but I just don't think that the roundabout is the way. And the other side of it is, I know you've negotiated with the road commission, but let's face it, Bedford Township doesn't own road easements. They do. We're buying access for them, is that correct?
We're buying, yeah, it would be purchase for right-of-way, highway easement.
Purchase for right-of-way that the road commission will own.
That's probably correct. They would probably put it in their name.
And they would have total authority over what goes in there, signage, pipelines.
Well, I guess that would be dictated for the area that would be required for the actual use of the roadway. The residual right-of-way probably would be retained by the township, I presume, but that hasn't been
Do we own
formally
any?
discussed.
Do you know if we own any? You've been our engineer for many years. Do we own any residual right-of-way?
Well, we'll be talking about some easements shortly that we were going to acquire on the TAP grant on Lewis Avenue, and they decided to have it acquired in Bedford Township's name. And the same thing at Secor and Smith, or
The road
Secor and
commission did?
Stearns, yes.
That's the liability belongs to us. Well, I totally support the road commission. I worked there for quite a while. I like the people there. I know they're doing business, and I know they're trying to do business in their best interest, but I think this is totally out of whack in terms of Bedford Township having to put this kind of money into this project. I'm totally against it.
So what would be your resolution for the issue at that intersection?
We don't have to accept a grant. The road
I
commission got
know,
the
but we
grant.
don't have the funds to spend $700,000 on making it, or $800,000 to reconfigure, I mean, they've looked at it many times. You can't just take Jackman Road and move it over.
No. It was repaired, it was fixed many years ago. It used to be a curve that was far more dangerous than what it is now. I don't think the statistics for requiring it are there. I mean, I think that we should be provided statistics before we agree to do for the road commission what they don't want to do for themselves. It's their grant, they got it from MDOT. I think they should be provided
They only
with
have so
funds.
much funds, though, to work with, and they've been a great partner with us with many other roads. I mean, they're looking at Whiteford Center at a $900,000 project. I mean, they've been a great partner. We've got to be able to partner with them in order to get some of these projects moved through. They
Yeah,
only have
projects
so
that
much
we need.
funds. Mr. Steiner?
Mr. Bushman, and Ms. Tinford made a comment, and, I mean, I've been out here for a long time, too, that she said that the road used to be a curved road. What am I missing that I don't remember, a curved road? I mean, I know we've got the access from eastbound Smith to southbound Jackman. What other curve was there ever there?
I'm trying to remember myself. Actually, it used to be an offset jog, and then they put the curve in.
Yeah.
That added the curve to expedite traffic.
Okay,
but-
so they added the curve that
Yes.
was there, but it was, because I remember it was a jog forever.
Yeah.
was it looked at, and I think you may have, was it ever looked at to possibly utilize that curve instead and then make that all lanes to hit that northern piece? So in other words, it'd be just like an S.
An S curve.
And did you guys look at that
Not
prior to this?
Not as part of this grant. I know years ago there was some review of that, but that's been 20, 30 years ago by the
That
road.
far back?
Nothing
Okay.
recent of that. That's the only, as part of this grant, the only thing they applied for, as I said before, was the roundabout.
Because the reason I'm going that direction is I'm thinking because even if you did that and tried to make something similar, that probably costs us more than the 175 to make that usable for all, all lanes, both directions.
Well, and there is some definite efficiencies of a roundabout,
Right.
and that makes, correct.
Then the only other thing I thought of too is, we're looking at these numbers and the total of everything that they've got there, it came up to 977. And it's listed at 932 with 600 from the state. So the county has agreed to 175. Let's just say that it does come in at that lower amount. Could the township possibly convince them that we did 157 and they still stayed at 175? Since they've agreed to 175?
They agreed to a 50-50 split with a max of 175. Is there 50? But it's a 50-50 split.
And that was at the second meeting. The first meeting, they agreed to 150, and the second meeting, they went up to 175.
And I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm right down the middle on this one right this second. So I'm going to defer to somebody else. I need some more input here.
To me, what's the other fix
There isn't one.
that would cost us less than or equal to our 175 or 200? There is nothing that we've studied. The road commission's been working on it, and Barry's firm's been working on it, and they've come up with this idea. This is a CMAQ grant, which is a Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Grant. It's a use it or lose it. And are we willing to throw away 600 in a grant plus 175 from the road commission to do what?
Well, either way, what Mr. Steiner's talking about, you're still going to have to buy property. You're not going to get away.
Plus construct a thing
Well-
all at our dollar.
I could tell you right now, we gave up a grant, or not this board, at Temperance and Lewis to blow out that whole intersection, and that was turned down. We gave up a grant at Concierge and Secor, to do some work there, to put, turning lanes there. That was turned down. Once you turn down a grant at an intersection, don't think they're coming knocking on your door seeing what else they can do to fix the issue. They came with us with a fix. This is a fix that we can do right now. Like Mr. Francis said, $775,000 we're gonna be throwing out the window for a potential fix for the future. This is the fix for the future. Not just for now. This will handle our needs for years to come.
And I agree with Nancy that Smith and Secor is in high traffic, probably more accidents than here. But that's a multi-million-dollar project on that one.
And I can tell you right now, Jason Shepard is working very hard on our behalf to work on something to go through that. He's lobbying right now with the state.
To go through what?
Well, Secor needs to be
To
widened.
look at Secor.
Oh, Secor.
Secor needs to be widened from
Right.
Stearns all the way to the state line.
Yeah, I don't know.
And the roundabout would be part of that, but that's a multi-million-dollar project. A lot of property needs to be purchased for that kind of a deal. We're working on that, but I hope we live long enough to see it.
Essentially, you're correct. I mean, in your discussion, it's basically a use it or lose it grant, and it's.
Craig or TC,
There.
which one of you are first?
Craig was up first.
Mr. Montry?
I was just gonna ask, is this 2 lanes around, or is that 1 lane on the outside?
That's essentially a one-lane configuration right now. We're looking at it as possible. This is not a final design. As you notice, we've got a couple different designs that you've shown on this, and we're looking at options, but Actually, that may turn out to be a two-lane, now that I look at that. Yeah, I believe that's a two-lane configuration, the way we have that set up.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mean the oval?
Well, yeah, two double lanes for maneuvering through the roundabout.
Keep in mind too, or TC, go ahead.
No, I just was going to echo a couple points. I think the thing that, for me, that is the only reason why this should be done is if you look back historically on this board, at least I can't find, and as we look forward over the next, 10 years, I don't think there's going to be an opportunity for this board to spend $175,000 and have an impact on traffic flow and congestion mitigation that this board has an opportunity to do. Would it be the first project that I would pick? Is it the greatest need in the township? Absolutely not. But the fact of the matter is we're not sitting on a pot of gold to affect another intersection. And given the amount of money that we can put into this, we will absolutely mitigate a lot of congestion for the future, and I think that's largely what we're here to do.
There's one other intersection, like Ms. Tinneberry's pointed out, that's a major issue, and that's Smith and Secor.
Agreed.
We're able to fix
It's
this one
horrible.
right now at a fraction of the cost.
Absolutely.
If you look at that map where it shows the roundabout on there, that whole square right there is the whole piece of property that we're buying. That can be, sold to the adjacent owner, and they could, tear all the buildings down and do something with it. I mean, it's not, it'll be a nice piece of property at the end of the day. Ms. Tinneberry?
Well, I would like us to just use accurate figures. It's not 175,000, it's 220,000. We have to pay the 45 just because it's coming out of a different fund. It's a fund, but that Bedford taxpayers have invested money. It's not, why are we eliminating the 45,000 that it's going to cost us? We need to use the correct cost, and it's 220,000, not 175.
That's correct. I was speaking only on what the cost to the general fund would be. But you're right. The relocation of the water line, if needed, could be 45,000.
And my other comment is, this is an estimate. What are we approving tonight, the estimate? Or I mean, what is being asked to be approved? Is it the estimate? Is it moving forward? Because, I mean, I know Barry knows as well as any of us that an estimate generally goes up, especially as the economy is in flux and everything is going up. I think that this is more than that. Is the road commission going to cough up their fair share? Or are they saying 175 bottom line and we have to put in? I mean, there are a lot of other, okay, it's not a grant, but Douglas Road is in terrible shape. Those people pay taxes every year. They deserve a better road. And so, and along with other roads. So when you're talking about just $220,000, that $220,000 in a road project could be spent, in my opinion, in a much more effective way.
I think we'll be able to get Douglas done this year.
Okay, well, don't be throwing that in when I'm making my comment.
Mr. Steiner?
So, and granted, I'm using something from the next item on the agenda, but the two parcels, are we talking about splitting this parcel?
No. There's two parcels
it's
right
already-
now,
and-
one building sits on both parcels.
Okay, that was my question. I was gonna say, how do we get two parcels when there's a building right
Yeah.
across the middle? Okay, so that's,
We would sell it as one
okay.
at the end of the day.
So basically, the building comes down, then the eastern parcel becomes a sellable parcel.
Yeah, a C1 sellable parcel.
So there, you might recoup, your $75,000.
You
or
could.
50,000, whatever.
Ms. Tinneberry?
It hasn't sold in years, so, excuse me, but it's been up for sale for a long time.
Because it's got 3 junk buildings on it that are dilapidated with no
Tear
liquor.
it down for
with no liquor
25,000.
license. Huh?
They can tear it down for 25,000.
Unless the chief can burn it.
I'm just saying, it's not a rosy picture.
Any more questions for Mr. Bushman? I mean, I have a whole list of statistics here on roundabouts, you know, about you know, according to the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, a modern roundabout provides a 39% reduction in total crashes and a 90% reduction in serious injury and fatality crashes. I mean, those are huge statistics. You know, so I mean, but I'm not gonna read them all. There's a lot of statistics here, but.
Well, the benefit too is you've got a very awkward intersection. That compounds the issue here. You've got an offset intersection that's difficult to fix without purchasing additional property, no matter what you do.
And
it does during morning hours, Jackman Road traffic itself, southbound, stacks up significantly because essentially they're blocked from through traffic.
Well, and potentially, if we don't do this, let's just be honest, that bar could be bought and built on, and the other property over there could be built on, and then our cost to make something happen 10 years from now just quadrupled at minimum,
I do have one more.
if we can do it.
I do have one more question, and maybe this will make my mind up one way or the other. You've got two sample drawings here right now. The first one I have has the large oval, and the second one is more of a, true circle roundabout. There's a lot of difference in there. Is that estimate for either one of those?
It is. Keep in mind, the estimate, depending on the configuration, is very, very similar. It may look different in size. I mean, the scale of the drawing's a little different, so it looks a little different. But generally speaking, we've looked at about 3 or 4 iterations and various fixes for that, and how much asphalt and concrete and the like. It was determined that pretty much the cost of it's about the same.
And the reason I asked that, I mean, if it was me and if I was to say yes, the oval would be the way I would really prefer to go. It gives people more time to think in that amount of distance, because some of those short roundabouts, people get a little frantic and say, oh my God, which lane am I gonna be in? Now if you're definitely talking 2 lanes, that makes a difference to people.
The oval was the last consideration, and the purpose of the oval was because of the offset intersection and possibly functioning better. The only disadvantage of an oval is the fact that if you're in a circle, you've got a uniform turn movement and a uniform curve. Where in an oval, you've kind of adjusted but it also slows down traffic a little bit more too.
Okay, I look for a motion.
To what? What motion are you looking for tonight? We're not approving a contract because we don't have a contract.
To approve moving forward with the roundabout and the partnership with the road commission.
It seems like that might be a little premature. The item E on the agenda tonight was to approval to negotiate for the purchase of the property that we would need to make this work. Seems like that's the only thing we need to vote on tonight is that. Because if we can't buy that, this whole thing is all smoke.
The road commission's got to know whether or not we want to move forward with the grant. Ms. Tinneberry?
Well, then again, if we can buy it, and we have this bar, I mean, what are we going to do with it if we don't? I mean, we're not in the business of buying and selling property. It hasn't been purchased for years, and I don't know actually that there's anybody going to want to buy a piece of property on a roundabout. I just don't think that, I mean, I know that's the next item, but I don't think that that's feasible either to buy property. Buying right-of-way and some easement area is one thing, but buying a whole piece of property with a building on it that has to be torn down I don't think that's in the best interest of Bedford taxpayer dollars.
The road commission won't buy property.
They buy easements all the time. The road commission.
It was what?
That was a statement directed by the managing director that they would not, I mean, they do buy easements and small parcels of land for some right-of-way expansion and the like, but they felt that that was a precedent they did not want to set. and made that comment that they would not buy the parcels.
In this instance, that's my point. It's not in all incidents, but I understand they wouldn't want to in this incident, but.
Barry,
I
what's
just
your
think there's too
what's your
many
suggestion at this point of a motion? I mean, we were,
Well, you've got two issues, obviously, one which is the next issue on the right-of-way purchase, but I know the Road Commission, based on what their motion was at their board meeting, was to approve the 175, up to the 175 at a 50-50 split. And I know they were looking for a request for an authorization or intent by Bedford to also enter into an agreement to proceed with the design, because they're not going to proceed with any design for the work that needs to proceed if we're going to move forward with a 2020 project for this interchange or intersection.
it's been talked about now, how many months actually has it been since they accepted the grant or were offered the grant?
Since last fall, yes.
So I mean, we have to make a decision whether or not we want to accept it. So. Paul, did you want to try to make a motion?
I'm trying to think of how you word this thing. I'm caught a little,
Marty, do you have any suggestions? We got to pay you for something tonight.
we're kind of agreeing to a concept, aren't we?
It's contingent upon the other and contingent both ways.
It seems to me that you need to consult with the engineer as to the scheduling of the order of the priorities. And perhaps, I know very little about this, but it seems to me the entire project rests on whether or not first you acquire the property. If you don't acquire the property, I think that answers the question as to whether you even consider the other items. If you're not going to acquire the property, then...
But it could be looked at the other way around, too. Why is this board going to approve the purchase property, and then we're not going to approve the project?
Certainly,
So-
certainly.
So that's why we
So-
switched it around.
Certainly.
Well, and that's what I said a minute ago, Ms. Peroni. I said it's almost like you would, each one of those, if you're inclined to vote yes, you'd almost have to state each one is contingent upon the other one in the motion.
Mr. Clements? Correct.
Barry, what is the timeline as far as how quickly we have to act on the 175? They're looking for the commitment for the 175, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we could make a contingent agreement that on successful acquisition of the property, the intent would be to move forward. Absent successfully acquiring the property, then the intent would obviously go away.
Paul?
As long as we put a contingency in there, that it's all contingent on us being able to secure the property that's needed for the project. We're really approving in principle, I guess, the concept of splitting 50-50 with a max of 175 with the road commission for the balance of the project. 175 is their 50%. Ours could be a little more if you add in the amount that we're paying out of the, or proposing to be paid out of the water fund.
Ms. Tinevery?
I just wanted to clarify again that we don't have any control over their 175, but it's $220. And has anybody even talked about just the amount that we need for the easement or the road right-of-way? I mean, why are we talking about the whole property? Are we opening up a bar?
Because they're not selling just the easement, they're selling the parcel.
Have you asked them?
No, but, I mean,
It's owned by an estate, so the owner is no longer with us. It's being handled by a law firm somewhere. I don't know the name of the firm.
Well, since there's two parcels there, I mean, it would be a lot cheaper if we could just buy the easement and they could do what they want, sell it to somebody who would have two parcels. I just don't understand why we're not
but
even
Nancy,
considering.
the parcels split down buildings.
Pardon me?
The building.
No, I
Building
get
that's set on
that. I
both
get
parcels.
that. They're gonna have to either remodel the building or tear down the building, but that shouldn't be our issue.
We only have to tear down the tavern. We don't have to tear down the other buildings.
The other buildings are falling
There's
down.
three. Well, yeah, I mean,
I
actually, the
don't know, I'm
block
just-
building isn't. I looked at it structurally, but the garage is definitely falling down.
I'm just saying we're buying more than, we're discussing buying more than we need.
Barry, can this wait till the next meeting?
Till the, yeah, I'm sure that it could wait another.
Because we don't have our,
yeah.
frankly, we don't have our act together on what the motion ought to be.
Mhm.
So
Certainly
shame
you
on us
could-
for not doing that.
Yeah, you could certainly refine that and develop a final motion.
Why doesn't the motion work, what Mr. Clemens just said, contingent? I don't understand what's so difficult that we're entering into an agreement to move forward with the roundabout. His estimates are pretty dadgum close with what they need to be. I mean, we're entering into an agreement with the road commission to do the roundabout. We'll make it contingent on the purchase of the property. I don't understand. It's really that simple. Ms. Tinderberry?
Are these estimates based on 2018 prices, or are they adding in possible increases for 2019 prices in 2020, because this won't even get done in 19?
The intent is it's based on current bid prices. That would still be, 2020 is October of this year. So, I mean, that's the state fiscal year is October 1st. And the goal is, with these numbers, they would be accurate for this coming season.
I'm working on it.
Somebody can make a motion.
I mean, we're making a motion to give them a thumbs up.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
kinda
that's
pretty much what I
basically
feel like
what
it
we're
is.
doing here. It's not, there's not a bunch of surprises. If we want the roundabout, it's gonna cost us roughly $220,000, with 45 coming out of the water fund of it.
So what is happening if we don't make a motion right now? Like, what's stopping and what's starting if we do make a motion?
Well, you have to accept the grant. The grant just doesn't
Is
sit.
that the motion? We're making a motion
Well,
to
you're
accept the
accepting the
grant?
project as a whole, and accepting the grant would be part of the motion. I mean, the grant just doesn't sit there for 20 years waiting for us. We have to accept it within a timely manner, and it's been May, since they've got, awarded the grant, so we have to make a move on it. And now we're at that point, according to the road commission, to where we need to, start moving toward accepting it and letting them know that we want the grant. I don't understand what tabling does for us. I don't know why we need more time.
Well, I
Either we
feel
want the
like-
roundabout or we don't for
I can't speak for the
$175,000.
board. I feel like the board wants to move forward. It's just like, what are you moving forward on? We give them a thumbs up as long as, like, contingent upon, we buy the property, contingent upon, we get the grant, contingent upon. Is that what it is? Is that more or less what it is?
That's effectively what we're trying to draft.
Thumbs up.
So it doesn't hurt to table it to the next meeting. This is our first meeting that we've really thoroughly discussed this. I don't think that something this important and this detailed and deep hurts to table. So I'm going to make a motion to table this agenda item regarding the roundabout at Jackman and Smith until the next scheduled board meeting.
Support. And the reason I'm doing that is this has got too many moving parts to buy on it tonight. If we say, well, I agree to split the cost with the road commission, and then the cost come in at $2 million, what have we agreed to? Something we're not gonna do.
You got a guy you trust right there that.
Well, I'm not saying that I don't trust
Within
him.
10% on every project.
I'm not saying, we just don't have our ducks in a row to agree to a contract this size tonight. That's all I'm saying, and if it can wait another couple of weeks till the next meeting, we'll get our attorneys on it to draft a motion that makes legal sense and protects us. That's all I'm saying. We're just not ready to do it.
And that meeting,
My opinion.
March 5.
I call the question.
Okay. We have a support. Mr. Francis supported. Would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni?
Aye. Motion passed 6-0. Moving on. Item 8. E, request for authorization to enter into negotiations with Miller Danbury Commercial Realty to obtain 6602 Jackman Road property. I would assume the board wants to table this as well, because we don't want to
Do you
purchase
have a-
property until we know we're gonna take the grant.
Do you have a ballpark on that
What?
for this?
As far as
I mean,
how much
like,
it costs?
yeah.
75 what's listed.
It's listed currently at 75.
And that's like the majority of this, what we just tabled, is that. Buying that and dozing it, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So like that's the bulk of our
75 would be to
175.
purchase it, and he figured 25 would be to doze it.
I think we should pass a motion to approve, to authorize the board to start negotiations with the realtor on a price. That doesn't need to be, we're
Takes
not
time.
signing anything, we're not buying anything, we're just talking to them.
I agree with you, Paul, and as part of that discussion, our contingent in the offer would be on successful,
If we even have an
Motion
offer
passing of the
by
project,
that time, right?
which we should have by March 5th, which is clearly reasonable for any real estate contract to have a contingent answer.
It's just
within-
gotta go through the courts,
Right.
the offer and stuff, so it might take a little,
But from our position, we'd be able to answer our own contingent within 2 to 3 weeks.
hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, it would have to go through the court, but at
Mr.
least it'll be
Montry?
covered.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Has anyone talked to the realtor?
I met with him and walked through the building.
Okay, so you have, so, I mean, if the motion is made, I would assume that we would have, it would have to come back to the board for approval. It couldn't be on just if they take 75 or pay 75
No, it'd have to come back to the board for approval, yeah.
for approval.
Yeah, I just toured it to look for asbestos or anything like that. You know, what the makeup of the building was, the condition of it, stuff like that.
He did as best as he could.
I just did
I
as
bet he
best as I
did.
could.
I bet,
That's a good
I
one.
bet he did. Okay, just wondered if anyone had talked to them or if this was just printed off the internet.
But I would think that we as a board would need to give someone some direction to be able to negotiate on our behalf. I mean, clearly in a real estate transaction, you don't televise your strategy going into the transaction when you're about to negotiate. So I think given that, we have to empower somebody to initially begin that negotiation and speak on this board's behalf to bring back an offer.
As long as they bring back an offer, I don't want to, I mean, I don't think we should be a part of agreeing on a number right now, just like you said.
Tonight.
Of course, maybe somebody would go out and bid us higher, and then I'd be all set. I think I might do that.
Who would we be giving approval to?
Huh?
Just to negotiate,
Negotiate.
to start
To
a
Paul?
contact with
Probably
them.
should be me.
That's
yeah.
it.
Okay.
But
And it should either be the supervisor or in conjunction with a law firm.
I don't think we need a law firm. What about just 2 board members? Supervisor and,
it's not, I mean,
Nancy, you
we're
don't
gonna-
think we need the property.
I know, well, I'm just
Keep your
giving my
comment.
opinion.
We have to start somewhere.
Well, now we got another bill.
I would think
the
after
lawyer.
after the, you know, we get the, you know, negotiations going, I would think at that point, we would involve legal, you know, to say, hey, this is what we're doing, this is the offer, this, you know, to make sure everything's legit, as far as liens or whatever. But,
Whatever it is, it's gonna have to come back to this board to
Absolutely,
authorize
yeah.
to proceed with to make the offer. This
Mr.
board has to
Supervisor.
agree to make an offer, because if it's offered by us and they accept it, that's a contract. So the board needs to decide at that point and vote on it,
Mr. Clement?
make the offer. This is just to talk
Give
to
me
a
hour, I'm gonna
realtor.
take a attempt at a motion. I would like to make a motion for this board to approve Supervisor Paul Peroni and Treasurer Paul Francis to enter into negotiations for purchase of the property at 6602 Jackman Road, Temperance, Michigan, 48182, with a contingent stipulation that no deal would be authorized without board approval and upon this board approving to engage in the roundabout contract with Monroe County Road Commission.
Friendly amendment as long as I'm doing the talking.
I'll second it with a comment. Also, upon reaching a potential agreement, that it also needs to be reviewed as stated by legal. And then if we decide to go forward, it has to come to this board, and then an actual contract would be signed at that point.
Sure.
Did you second that?
Yeah, that was a second with
Okay.
an amendment.
I just want to say, you know, I did take, myself and Al went over there and walked through it. You know, I'm not an asbestos professional, to say the least. And we looked at it, had wood floors. It looked like it had been updated, you know, not recently, but, you know, recent enough. It's got an old Michigan basement in it, you know, but it's got drywall for walls and stuff like that. So I'm just assuming that it doesn't have it, you know. So I don't know if we want to get somebody to professionally look, you know, because our cost would go way up to tear it down if it does have asbestos. I just want to say that for the record.
That might be something
Well,
to
you'd put
clarify
in-
in your negotiations.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's one of the contingencies you put in an offer at the time you make an offer.
Okay.
Correct.
But all we're doing is authorizing representatives from the board to start negotiating with the Realtor, which may or may not be successful, and whatever they come up with, why, they'll report back to the board, and the board will act on it.
Okay. Could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mrs. Tinneberry?
No, and please let the record reflect that I do not think we should be buying property.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 5-1. Item 8G, request to approve the Manikin Smith Group agreement for engineering services for the extension of water service under the Lewis Avenue Railroad tracks. Barry?
The township has looked in conjunction with South County Water to try to push water north up Lewis Avenue for a while. I know there's been a couple petitions already looked at for those properties down Erie Road and further north, and that were unsuccessful primarily because of the cost and the ability to cross the Ann Arbor Railroad tracks. And there's even been recent discussions about extending water up to Samaria and West down because of the Marathon tank farm up there. And so the discussion has been that one of the, essentially the block issues that's blocking it due to cost and the need for future extension is to look at extending it under the railroad tracks. This proposal, as discussed with the township and with South County Water, was to go ahead and extend the water a distance of roughly 500 feet, which would take it from where it currently ends just north of the South County Water building, and it would extend along their property, cross the Ann Arbor Railroad tracks to the north side, and then return back to Lewis Avenue, where it could be extended in the future for other purposes. And South County Water has agreed to a pay for any upsize cost over the 12-inch basic cost, and they're asking for a 16-inch water main to extend for future purposes up throughout to service other areas of Bedford Township.
Discussion for Mr. Bushman, Ms. Tinneberry.
What is South County Water paying?
They're paying for the, essentially the difference of the 12 to 16 upsize cost.
They're not paying any installation, any going under the road. They're the ones that are going to benefit by the customers.
Well, everybody benefits, even Bedford Township, but in the user fees. But at this part of this discussion, because of the residual funds you do have in your South County water, or the funds in your, that you have, they need to be used, and that's the purpose of the funding of that source of funds that you have, is to extend water main or upgrade systems, and that would be the proper use of those funds that you have.
Okay, thank you. I do understand that. However, we have a very old system that has not had upgrades, systematic upgrades, this section, this section, this section. And my concern is that at some point, those are going to go pretty much all at the same time. They were all installed pretty much all at the same time in the 70s, I think. And so we use it to bore under the railroad tracks. Well, I guess,
$2.5 million in there.
I know, it would take more than $2.5 million to upgrade or replace or put in new piping for people who've lived here for years. What is the benefit? What is the benefit? I remember years ago, a developer wanted to put in a subdivision at the corner of Samaria and Lewis, and he was required to put in the water line. If there's any new development going in, we got one going on Adler Road, they're required to pay the cost of putting in any water line, sewer line, whatever. It's always been the history, and I'm not saying that we have to live in the past and do what we always done, but I want to know what the benefit to each Bedford taxpayer and, well, water user, since you'd be taking it out of the water fund, what is the benefit to them?
Well, the benefit is obviously the ability to expand your system in the future, and this has been because of the cost to get underneath there, quite frankly, it's cost, the cost of SADs and the like for people in our township, north and east of there, has been so significant that it's really prevented the SADs from moving forward. Also, having said that, there may be some changes in the user fees and the like that South County Water would be actually at the start of the coming year to take on the responsibility of the maintenance and also implement the fees. And you, Bedford, would not be obtaining those fees any longer, but it would be South County Water's responsibility. So essentially, you would this would be probably a pretty good use of your money, because those fees no longer would be obtained and the maintenance would be assumed by South County Water.
The future.
Yes.
And what do we, like, what kind of future? My lifetime?
Yeah, right. I mean,
My life-
from starting really in the
About
coming year.
3 months.
Yeah, I was going to say.
No, 3 months from now, they're gonna start collecting tap-in fees and take over what he's talking about, and we're gonna have to stop, or they're gonna be charged a double tap-in fee.
Even more reason, I think, for them to bear some of the costs. So you're saying the estimate is $160,000
That's correct.
to bore under, to put in this upsized line and
To
go,
get to the north side of, yes, and back to Lewis Avenue,
which side of the road is this?
west side. Same side as where the facility is, South County Water.
Oh,
though.
that same
The
side.
termination is just north of their building.
Okay. Well, Barry, I know I'm a downer tonight for everything you're presenting, but I just don't, my whole premise is always, what's the benefit to the taxpayer, to the person who's lived here years and is paying, and I just don't see it. There's going to be a benefit to developers on up the road, and like I said, since the 1990s, we've had developers that have wanted to develop up there. In fact, the cemetery that was purchased by the township was quite a disappointment to some developers, because that's prime property for them. But, you know, I mean, it just, I don't see the benefit to the existing residents, so.
Mr. Francis?
I think a benefit, excuse me, would be generated by having more water customers. When you spread a cost of it over more customers, the price can go down. That's how it would benefit us in the future, benefit the current users in the future, with the possibility of lowering the cost of having water at their house.
Has that happened? I mean, we've had development ongoing since the 90s, huge development. Has that,
Well, South County Water will tell you it's happened, yeah. Can you see it in a bill?
yeah, I haven't seen it in my bills.
Probably not, but it's the same thing in the sewer. The more users you've got, the cheaper it is to operate it per user. That's the
Correct.
same principle, I think, that would apply here. So it does make some sense. And it's money that we've collected for years and haven't really spent hardly anything. And we're a little nervous about holding on to that money, being that it was collected for a specific purpose and it's not being yet used for that purpose. This matches that, this fits right in with the purpose of that. And
This will be the first time it was used.
But that's my whole point. That's my whole point. It was put in there by me and the people sitting out here that have, and people watching that have lived here for years. Now we're going to use that, not to benefit them, not to improve their system, not to go in and pay part of that money to investigate to see where there may be some issues with breakdown in the future. We're not doing that. We're boring under a railroad track, so developers, I'm all for development, I'm all for economic development, but I'm all for them paying their fair share. The people who have put that money in are not getting a benefit. I don't see that. That's my point. If you can explain that to me, I'm happy to listen, but.
On the other hand, shame on us for collecting a tap-in fee since the late 60s and not spending it.
Well, shame on us, but it doesn't mean we should just spend it willy-nilly.
Well, it's not willy-nilly. It's not before, it's just willy-nilly. The ultimate future expansion goal, along with South County Water, is to eventually do a loop that goes all the way up to Samaria and loops into Secor Road.
It's been there since I've been around here, 50 years.
I know. Mr. Steiner?
I think what I've heard.
Now Craig left.
Yeah, well.
I think what I've heard
too
a
bad
couple
you can't
times
handle.
is, everybody's almost looking like, why don't we see somebody coming to me and say, hey, my bill was $100, why isn't it now 80? That's what I'm sort of hearing. But on the other hand, it's not that you're going to get that. I mean, we all know about economics and the future and inflation and everything else. So instead of my next bill going from 100 to 130, maybe my next bill goes from 100 to 110 or 12 or 15. That's where you're seeing the difference. Unfortunately, that's the way the world works. I mean, we don't get things for free. And if we want anything, sooner or later, we're going to have to pay for it. We're going to have to pay for new and upgraded, et cetera. When you do have expansion like this and opportunity, then if you put the tap grant or put the taps in there and let them collect the fees on it, add more customer users in there, it helps at least stabilize that cost.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really what you're trying to say. It stabilizes your cost of increases.
Yes, and
More than
in
actually
conjunction with
saying
what
taking a
the goals of South County Water for Bedford Township really are.
Right, of course, then you got to keep going, and it's got to, loop, because you always have to loop it in. You can't have a dead main,
Right.
so.
We'll wait for Mr. Montry to come back. He's coming right now. So what's the pleasure of the board? Anybody else have any discussion? Okay. I look for a motion.
You don't want me to make a
I'll make a motion that we approve the extension of the water underneath the tracks to approve the agreement for professional services with Manick & Smith to design the extension of the water surface under the railroad tracks on Lewis Avenue. The preliminary estimate is roughly $160 for the project. The design fee, $8,900, and the CI&I fee is $6,400.
I'll support. This is just for
Motions.
the engineering, this is just for engineering services,
That's right.
correct? Okay.
Motion in support of it, Mr. Montry. Discussion. Could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Peroni?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mrs. Tinneberry?
My vote is no, and let the record reflect that I don't see the benefit to the taxpayers.
And Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Okay, the motion is passed 5-1.
I think they went with Buckeye.
Okay, the next
They
agenda
went with
item is
Manick
to approve the Manick & Smith group charge for downtown temperance improvements. You're back up again. We have before us a fee in the amount of $82.50. Mr. Bushman, if you can explain it.
Yes, as part of the TAP grant, we investigated, all the improvements that were required along there. And after, we had originally anticipated there were going to be approximately 11 easements required. As part of this project, it was determined ultimately 18 easements were required for the project. As part of that, because it was stipulated specifically in our contract that we were anticipating the 11, however, like I said, because of grading, after the topographic survey, after meeting with people, and the need for it, it became evident that we did need 18. So it's about a 10-step process to obtain an easement on a project of this nature, since it's state and federal monies involved, involving a title search, the valuation determination, and forms that were required, the donation forms and meetings. We have multiple meetings. Typically, the average of meeting is 3 with each person. We prepare the necessary detailed drawings and legal descriptions. We have to sign and notarize, typically meeting the people at the bank. We have to file and record with each of the deeds with the Register of Deeds. We have to file it with the state, and then the state has their own reviewers that we meet with to make sure it complies with all their requirements before it's approved. As a result of that, we had 7 easements. We're asking for a fee of $750 per easement to do that, and that totals what the amount that you have before you tonight. And I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have them.
Ms. Tinderberry? I got you before your hand went up.
I can't look at you, Barry. I gotta look this way. Where are these? I mean, are we
Within
talking
the project
about
limits.
down? Are we talking about down near Smith or up near Temperance Road?
The project limits are essentially from where Ivor Lindsay goes to about Howard Street or up by the park, north of Temperance.
Okay.
That's the limits of the TAP grant project, so they're within the TAP grant limits where the new sidewalk and improvements are being made.
Okay, and
And at the intersection with Temperance and Lewis.
so it's on both sides of the street,
Mm-hmm.
up from, okay, there to there. And is it every individual separate parcel? Or
No, it's scattered, and some of them are permanent, some of them are temporary for grading, and because as you get, some of the sidewalks need to be pushed away from the road a little bit, and you get closer to the right-of-way, so you need some easements for grading and sloping and proper treatment of the people's property. And obviously, people have some of those homes are rather close to the road, so you have to meet with them to try to look at what we can do to properly grade their property and treat it right as we come through with the new sidewalk.
Okay, so are these considered utility easements or right-of-way easements?
They're anticipated to now be township easements primarily for sidewalk.
And what kind of liability do we have for township easements?
Well, any property owner has liability with respect to the use of property, especially if it's open to the public. So you have a slip and fall. I'm not sure what the easement, if there would be any allocation of liability in the easement documents. Is that something that's typically stated in them?
Not specifically, no. That's
So typically with an easement, the property owner continues to own the property. However, granting rights to the public through this easement description to use that. So the property owner would continue to have the liability through their homeowner's insurance, general liability coverage. Presumably, there could be double liability if the township's responsible for maintaining the sidewalk with ice and snow removal. So the township probably could have some liability in that regard. If the township owns the property, underlying property, there's liability there too. And I'm sure the township has liability insurance for all the assets that it owns.
And it is an easement, and they're similar to the written agreements that we worked with Tom Graham on for the DDA.
I want you to explain to the board, make sure they understand that we didn't get all the easements signed. There's one person that didn't sign the easement, so there's going to be a break in the sidewalk.
A short break.
A short break,
Yep.
but there will be a stoppage. I don't know, hopefully we continue to work on them, but, eventually they'll do it, but there'll be one section of this whole deal that's not completed.
Yeah. Most places, either we have an existing highway easement or we procured an it's an easement only. It's not property that we've actually bought or procured, so it's strictly easement.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Marty.
Any other questions? So Barry, does that essentially mean that we have to clear the sidewalks then for snow? Because we own the easement, or are they still required to clear the snow?
Well, generally, the way I don't know if Marty, you want to speak to that directly?
I haven't seen the typical
Okay,
easements.
Okay, yeah, I know Tom was working, we were working with Tom on that, and I can read it to you directly. And this is just a typical one. Grant in offices at, we're talking about Bedford Township, 8100 Jackman Road. The grantee, its successor, assigns permittees an exclusive permanent easement for the purpose of making streetscape improvements, which include but are not limited to installing, constructing, maintaining, repairing, and constructing a sidewalk and/or decorative walls, benches, and/or decorative pavers, or to remove said improvements in the future, subject to restoration of the subject easement area and the right to enter upon the easement property for construction, maintenance, repair, and to remove all necessary materials or objects incidental thereto, which land is situated in the Township of Bedford. And we go and provide a description and drawing of the property, and the grantee shall be exclusively responsible for the cost and for the installation, construction, maintenance, and reconstruction of the improvement it makes to the easement property. Should the grantor desire to make changes in the property within the easement area, prior written approval shall be obtained from the grantee if the changes will impact the subject improvements or use thereof. The grantee shall have the right and authority to remove any obstruction that interfere with the intended use of the improvements granted by this easement. The grantee agrees by accepting this easement to the extent possible and reasonable. The grantee shall restore any items in the easement area that existed prior to installation, and this easement shall bind and inure to the benefit and burden of the respective parties and their personal representatives, successors, and assigns. So there is.
I hear the word, and the grantee, which is the township, receiving the easement shall be responsible for the maintenance of the sidewalk. Typically, in my mind, that would mean the physical repair and replacement of uneven settled squares and things. I think what's absent is discussion about snow and ice removal. I know cities, for example, City of Monroe has an ordinance that requires property owners to clear their snow and ice and/or maintain them free from ice with salt, despite the property owner not having ownership of the actual sidewalk.
So do we, but we're their owner.
Yeah, so we'll have to buy your
We're,
shovel.
we're, you're not going to be the owner of the property. You're taking an easement to put the sidewalk.
Just wanted to be clear.
So
on that. That would-
if your ordinance requires them to maintain the ice and snow removal, then that would control. And maybe these easement documents can clarify and say something about, but not maintain snow and ice as that is regulated by township
In
ordinance.
general, it was intended when discussed with the people that we build it, such as you had discussed, and repair any deficiencies in it. But the general maintenance or shoveling would be prescribed just as usual, like you've said.
Okay. Any more questions? If none, I look for a motion.
Mr. Supervisor, I'll make a motion that this board approve the request for the additional 11 easements for a total of $8,250 to Manikin Smith for the downtown development grant project.
Second.
Okay, motion supported by Mr. Steiner. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 6-0.
That was for Barry.
Item 8I, resolution to approve uniform video service local franchise agreement with Buckeye Cablevision. Marty, if you want to take this one for us, and this kind of sprung on us quickly. The board had to get this item basically because it's going to automatically renew if we don't make a motion to go forward with it. I know the communication committee's been working on this for a while, but there's some new law changes. So if you want to get into it,
Okay, well,
within mind, we have a half hour.
in 1999, Buckeye Cablevision was awarded a 20-year franchise for providing cable television in the community. So that was 20 years. 20 years is coming up in a couple weeks, or if not, maybe 1 or 2 weeks. And so they have submitted under the so-called new law. It's not that new, it's over 10 years old, mandated by the state of Michigan, where all new franchise agreements and the renewal of any existing franchise agreements shall utilize the standard state of Michigan form for cable television franchise agreements. So what we have is a state law that was enacted after the 1999 franchise agreement that's now expiring. And every franchise agreement since 2007, when that law was enacted, is supposed to use the state form. It's a standard form used throughout the state. In fact, Charter, Cable, Vision utilize that form, and the township approved that using the same standard form that Buckeye presented in 2007, and it was renewed again in 2017. Buckeye has submitted the state standard form, and we received it at the township on January 30th. The state law, which was definitely heavily lobbied by the telecommunication providers, obvious to me, has a very quick turnaround mandate where it only gives the municipality 30 days to review the proposed franchise agreement and approve it. Otherwise, it was automatically approved by default. So that's where we find ourselves. Late last week, I got a copy of this, and I dove in to study the statute, study the proposed agreement that was submitted. The agreement is word for word consistent with the statute because the state of Michigan created the agreement that everybody's supposed to use. So that is before you. There was not going to be another scheduled Township Board meeting, a regular meeting, before March 1st, when theoretically this would come into play automatically by default. So I thought it important to give you an opportunity to review it and take action on it if you so choose. You have other options, which would be to call a special meeting before the end of this month, or not take any action, and it'll still come into play.
Marty, does this mean another cable company can't come into Bedford because we have a franchise agreement in place?
No, it is specifically non-exclusive. So they encourage competition.
A lot of people think that because we have this franchise agreement that another cable company can't come into Bedford, which is not true.
Not true.
You know, we have talked to many different cable companies, and where cable is going, you know, they're just not interested. It's too much for infrastructure. Buckeye Cable, I got in a conversation with them last week about it, and Charter Communications. Basically, there's about 50% of the people that use Buckeye Cable right now in Bedford. Okay, if somebody were to come in here, they're going to assume they're going to get about 50% of that business. So now your number is cut way down. It's just not cost effective for them to come here with the amount of users that they would gain from it in the long run. So that's why you're not seeing them come here. We're too small. So we have been looking at it. We have been trying very hard for a while to, you know, to seek competition, and it's just, you know, so that's where we're at. Any other questions for Marty, Ms. Tinneberry?
Well, we had this on our desk tonight. I have not had a chance to read it. I don't usually want to vote on anything that I haven't read thoroughly. So I'm going to have to ask you the questions. What if we terminate it?
You can't terminate it unless you have a good, valid statutory reason that's consistent with the law.
We don't like it?
That's not sufficient.
Oh. What would be one? Give me one. You're the attorney. Tell me one I can get.
Well,
Somebody
maybe,
violated.
maybe they changed something in the standard franchise agreement different than what the state mandates, which they haven't done.
Okay.
I can't think of a reason, if they comply with the state law and they use the state mandated agreement, I don't know of a reason where you could reject it.
Well, I've been here since this began again, and I don't ever remember anyone saying that it was a lifetime agreement.
It's a 10-year agreement.
Well, based on what you're saying, Marty, in all truth and honesty, it's a lifetime agreement. If you can't terminate it, it doesn't matter 10 years, because
Well-
the next 10 years are approved.
When you say can't terminate it, I would say that if this is approved and Buckeye Cablevision violates the state law or does something dramatic that causes complaints to be filed with the Michigan Public Service Commission, the Michigan Public Service Commission will hold hearings and has the authority to terminate the franchise. So
So just to be clear, the reason you're saying that is because you'd like to see the taxpayers have that money back instead of us taking the franchise.
That's right.
Correct.
I pay
about
it. You probably
$400,000.
don't pay it. People who don't get cable don't pay it. I pay it.
I know.
But you don't pay it. So, it's not talking about you.
I don't, we have kindergarten.
No, my point is, they have terrible service. That's not a reason. We have to take their,
terrible service. There is the law requires Buckeye Cablevision to set up a complaint process to receive and handle the complaints and hopefully provide remedies. And if you're unsatisfied with the remedies provided by Buckeye Cablevision, the next step for complaints is with the Michigan Public Service Commission.
by the individual or the township.
Either one.
Well, I would just like to go on record as saying that this township board should be, I don't know, in the township update or whatever, putting out a survey, because I have it, it's terrible. Other people call me about their terrible service, and I tell them the same thing. There's nothing we can do about it, and that's not acceptable to the taxpayer. It's not acceptable to me either, but I'm hearing from our wise counsel that that's, we're between a rock and a hard place, and kind of the state is dumping on the taxpayer by having these kind of rules and regulations in this ordinance, so.
I did not say there was nothing you could do about it.
No, I'm saying, okay, you're asking for a long, extensive, I got better things to do than sit and watch TV, actually. But you did not say that, I agree. But when you're talking about a complicated process that nobody wants to spend their life following through with, is it going to take years to get them to do anything?
I could tell you this, they are trying.
Who's they?
Buckeye. I've called them, and I've been in communication with the lady. She follows all the Facebook posts, and she follows up on every single complaint. There's been a lot of stories in the past couple months of people that have gotten refunds. There's always going to be people that aren't satisfied, but they are trying. Now, I'm not saying they're perfect. I don't have Buckeye. I don't deal with them. So, it's, I don't know all the complaints, but I will say this. They do follow Facebook. They do take complaints. They do,
Okay, when you call them as the supervisor of Bedford Township, they're going to make you happy. They don't make customers happy. Just saying. I live it, I experienced it, so.
Mr. Francis?
There is something else that the customers that are unhappy could do. They could go to satellite. Because there is no infrastructure at satellite. All they do is park an antenna on your property somewhere or on your house. This system is satellite too. It's just they're not on every house. It's just one great big set of satellites in Ohio.
There's a lot of options homeowners have. You
Right.
can get a
I'm not
Verizon
saying
hotspot.
that we ought to stick with Buckeye all the time, because they're like any other business. If their customers are unhappy, they ought to know about it.
Well, they know about it.
They
don't
know
care.
about
I don't
it.
care what they say.
Telling
Well,
you
then
right now,
maybe
they know
you could
about it.
have a town hall meeting offering all these different options that people could go to and through and get away from Buckeye, because I'm not young enough to understand all the technology behind it. So we don't have Hotbox and Netflix and Zumba and whatever, all those,
Hulu.
whatever, Hulu. I don't know all that stuff. So if you had a town hall meeting about it with different experts here, I'd come, and I'd bring
You want to
lots
host
of
it?
people.
You want to host it with me,
Can't
co-host?
host it, I don't have any knowledge about it.
Oh, okay. Public comment's coming, ma'am. Sorry. Are you on the cable committee? Oh, come on up, come on up. Sorry about that, I didn't know you were a part of it. We just have, just so you know, we have limited time, so we just got to move with it.
Go as fast as I can. Deborah Lucius, Lucius, and I am on the Communications Media Committee. There was a survey taken a year and a half ago. We had Jason Abert from Comcast, and he sent us each a text, and we were supposed to forward the text to other people. They got over 1,000 responses that they either wanted a different cable company or some competition. So I do know that they've tried to do that, but I have not heard from Jason. I've been trying to get a hold of him, and
That's the thing, after 1,000 people, the cost of them to do their infrastructure, you know, I mean, even if you say you took that number to 2,000 or 3,000, it still outweighs, there's just not enough, there's not enough people here.
you're right. But
For
there
them
are
to
some
justify
people
it.
who don't have Buckeye broadband and have inquired about getting it out to their houses, and it cost, they said, oh, we can do it for $7,500.
Tell them to call again, they've changed it. They've changed the way they run that now. It's, the whole, just to give you an example, I had called about doing it at mine, and it was $4,200. I called 2 years later, which is 3 months ago, and it was $300.
Okay,
So the cost has dramatically changed, so tell them to call again.
okay, all right.
They used to charge per foot now they give you the first,
Okay.
it's totally different.
Okay, that's all I have.
What speed is that?
I don't know.
Well, they give you this slow speed for all that money.
No, that's just the infrastructure.
It's got a crank on it.
Yeah, I.
When I was selling my
believe so.
house, they made it contingent upon me getting Buckeye cable run to the house, so I had to get it.
Graph.
So, anyways, any more questions? I look for a motion.
Mr. Supervisor, I move that we approve and accept the Uniform Video Service local franchise agreement with Buckeye Cablevision as presented.
Second.
Motion is supported by Mr. Steiner. Discussion?
I would just say, like, out of principle of, I mean, even just the way that this was presented to us is like, it's blatant. Like, I got this today. They know full well what they're doing. And it's like, and there's obviously no loopholes outside of, I don't know, do you need a state rep to like argue the like state law, more or less, to get that changed for them to like be able to, because you can't opt out of it unless it's opposed to the state law, from my understanding. And they use that law to make their agreement so that they match, correct?
Correct.
So there's no loophole, and then you get this, here you get a week, if that, unless you do a special meeting, they're garbage, and
So outside of getting rid of the franchise fee, because that's why Ms. Tinneberry's bringing it up, why would we not approve it?
Well,
Another
that's-
cable company's not going to come.
well, and that's the thing. But it's like, there's a reason that they want it like this, because they don't want you to not be able to get out of it,
It's comes from
or
the
else it
state.
wouldn't be like that.
That contract comes from the state.
it's
It's not
state-
Buckeye making the contract. Everybody gets the same one.
The states who sends this the day before you have to approve it?
No.
I don't buy
got-
that.
got sprung
That's
on me
Buckeye.
Friday.
But that's Buckeye.
Well,
That's
why,
not the
Marty,
state.
explain why
The
why this is last
township
minute.
received it on January 30th.
Yep.
I received it last Thursday,
Yep.
Wednesday. And
I received
You
it.
received it today?
This morning in an email, hard copy, when I walked in tonight.
Yep.
That's Buckeye. That's not the state. That's them knowing full well that they don't want you to do a special meeting to fight this specific thing. They want the rollover.
But you can't fight it.
But, exactly.
It's either you accept or you don't.
I call the question, we need to give the
Quick
public
question,
some
though,
time to-
why is the percentage
No, I
part
called
blank?
the question. Once you call the
Okay.
question, there's no more discussion. That's just parliamentary procedure.
Can I make a,
Could I make a suggestion that the motion's not yet complete because you haven't stated what franchise fee
Okay.
to insert?
That's what I was just about to ask.
Well, he knows, I'm not.
The
gonna-
percentage. Gosh.
Well,
Do we want to have a
percentage part's
friendly
fine.
amendment? Would that satisfy it, Marty?
Yes.
I guess I can't amend my own motion. Somebody needs to help me.
By the
Mr.
way,
Steiner, would you like to amend?
there's two fees that have blanks in this agreement. One is the standard franchise fee, up to 5% of the gross revenues. Right now, you're collecting 4%. Then there's the PEG fees, public educational government channel fees. You can assess up to 2%. Right now, you're collecting none. So if you want to keep the status quo as you are now, you would say 4% franchise fee.
How about we withdraw the motion and withdraw the second and reword it and put it back in? Would that be better than a friendly amendment?
I think all you're lacking is how much of a franchise fee you want inserted.
4%. Which I should have said in the original motion.
But I can accept that on a second.
Okay, we have a motion, supported discussion.
I just want to make a comment that I wish that more of our committees, like, would be able to make, like, semi-regular, like, updates on this kind of stuff. This is the first time I've seen how much work, like, Ms. Lucius and the Communications Committee, like, the stuff that they've done and worked on and presented, that just gets.
How long have you guys
It all
been
gets
working
shot
on
down, but it's like, they're doing the right things.
You've been working on it 2 months on,
A little bit more than that because we had December in there. I wasn't there. I know they discussed it, so.
okay, so call the roll, please.
Okay, Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Tinnevery?
no,
Mr. Montry?
No.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni?
Aye. Motion passed, 4-2. Okay. Number 9, comments from the public. Comments limited to 5 minutes for each individual. Come on up.
Logan Tisdale. The township meeting on 7/17/2018, at the open meeting portion of that meeting, there were numerous residents from the Lewiston Estates subdivision present to comment on road improvement special assessments district role issue. This meeting appears on Agenda and Minutes Archive YouTube recording number 11 of Bedford Township trustee meeting on 7/17/2018. One person on Ashland Street spoke about speeders and one about stop sign runners and speeders. One person on Oakmont Street spoke about having speed bumps on the highway. The meeting was under the supervision of Mr. Lamar Frederick since Mr. Peroni was absent. One resident who lived on Ashland Road asked if there was going to be more better law enforcement in that subdivision. Mr. Frederick responded by saying that he would take it up with Mr. Peroni and he would have the deputies look into it. This is paraphrased, but that was my understanding of his response. The resident replied, "I asked the deputies to come, they laughed." The time into that meeting was between 29 minutes 56 seconds and 30 minutes 34 seconds for your information. On January 22, 2019, I mentioned to this board that the Monroe County Sheriff's Department logged 2,170 hours on patrol in Bedford Township and did not issue one traffic citation. In the close of that meeting, Trustee Tinnevery commented over 3 minutes on her concerns about this and community policing. On January 23, 2019, at either 2:03 PM or 7:03 PM, some unknown person posted a comment on the Monroe County Deputy Sheriff's Association Facebook website page with a clip that lasted 17 seconds of Mrs. Tinaveri's comments on January 22, 2019, at the township meeting, which was the previous day from the aforementioned post on that website. This is what it said, and this is on the Monroe County Deputy Sheriff's Association Facebook, and this is what it says: Monroe County Deputy Sheriff's Association, January 23 at 7:03 PM. Bedford Township Trustee Nancy Tinaveri does not support community policing, ? She would rather see people pay tickets instead, ! Exclamation point. Does she truly speak the majority of her constituents? ? This clip is from yesterday's board meeting. Then it shows the clip. It is troubling when our elected officials see law enforcement as simply a source of revenue. The legal system should not be used as a source of funding. The legal system is for justice. To imply that police should only write tickets and not be doing community policing is crazy. Community policing efforts have been proven effective in communities across the nation. Then in capitals, MCDSA strongly opposes any notions of our deputies only being revenue-generating traffic cops. That does not represent, 17 seconds does not represent what Ms. Tinaveri said. And did the person who asked for the police officers to go into that subdivision to do traffic policing, that response should have been they laughed. That is the community policing at the utmost. When a citizen comes to a police officer and said, this is what's going on in my subdivision, and he wants someone to come out there and to take traffic enforcement action so that people don't get hurt. The response should have been, sir, thank you for your information. When does this take place? What kind of cars are involved? What time of the day is this? Where do you live specifically? And can I sit in your driveway? And if you have 2,170 hours on patrol and you can't spend 15 minutes in that subdivision, you tell me that's community policing? It is not. And they hide under the umbrella of community policing, saying that they could go around for 2,170 hours on patrol and not write one single traffic ticket when they could go in that subdivision. My guess is find people that violate the law. I'm appalled by what I see on this website. And this is the people that you contract with. Nobody on this board can make a comment and ask questions about what they do for 2,170 hours? That's ridiculous. As a former police officer, if community policing isn't helping somebody that asks for a simple police officer to drive through a subdivision, then why are we contracting with these people? If it was up to me, I'd say, you know what, tell them, give them the 90-day notice and get your own police department. Thank you.
Any more comments?
Tim McAfee, 9837 Pamela Drive. Nancy, I was absolutely
Could you please address
insulted.
Could you please address the chair, please?
Yes,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairperson. Theoretical leader of our township, who I understand is out doing fundraising duties most of the time. I would appreciate you commenting on that later. And I asked a while ago for Mr. Francis to come up with personnel costs. Has anything been done on that? Mr. Peroni, there's talk all over the township. You're out doing fundraising activities during business hours. As the theoretical leader of this township, would you think it would be proper for you to account for your time Monday through Friday from 8 to 5 anyway? I would. Now, as far as the water going under the railroad tracks on Lewis Avenue, there was a federal grant in 1972. My house was required to get sewers. They ran out of money when they got the railroad tracks. Dick Burton, our county commissioner, lived on Valletta, made it to his house. Now,
Could you please address the chair, Mr. McAfee?
I am.
Thank you.
I didn't need city sewers. I'm on Saw All Sand. There's people in my subdivision, Bellcrest Manor, that did. Now, where is our grant writing committee? I hear on WJR, there's money everywhere.
Mr. McAfee, could you please address the chair and not look in the audience? You got to address the chair, please.
I can't talk and look around at the same time?
Not in public
Whose
comment.
rule is that? Yours?
No. Just continue your public comment.
I listen to WJR, I hear all the day on talk radio, there's all this money out there to remedy water situation in subdivisions. When that water stopped, Bellcrest Manor was the largest subdivision in this township that did not have city water. We are 47 years later. What the hell has happened in the meantime? I would appreciate a personal answer from every person concerning this, that we're paying our tax dollars to do this work. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public? And we really need to probably make a motion to extend the meeting. I look for a motion to extend the meeting past 10 o'clock.
So moved.
Okay, motion,
Support.
supported. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mrs. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 6-0. Okay.
Okay, thank you. My name is Laura Collins, 3352 Dean Road. I have a tax and accounting business. I am talking tonight in opposition of the Knox boxes. I just want to ask the chair, when is it going to be addressed, the Knox boxes, in a township meeting? This is 2 meetings I've been at, and I thought they were going to be. I just want to know if you can get an update on that. Some concerns I have, again, with the Knox box, as I told you guys before. There's been security issues with the box. The boxes have proven to be hacked by the articles that I've sent all of you guys last Friday. Master keys can be duplicated. Definitely a breach of security if our data is stolen. I have a lot of personal data in my office, and if somebody breaches the box and gets in, there's a lot of data that I have that can be stolen. I think it opens up your business to more crime opportunities. I would like the business owners to have a choice, an option for the Knox boxes, either to not install them at all or to have them installed with something in there besides a key to our businesses. I've read some of the code as well. I talked to a fire chief that teaches the code, and nowhere in the code can I find where it says a Knox box is required to pass a fire inspection. I'd like to know if somebody can show me where it says in their national code that a Knox box has to be put on your building in order to pass the fire inspection. That's all I have. I just want to say that I sent all of you guys an email on Friday along with the petitions that we had signed. We still have the petitions going. They can be signed in my office and at the Bedford Vets Center. I attached a bunch of articles that shows that the boxes can be breached, master keys can be duplicated. And lastly, I just want to thank TC for responding to my email. You were the only one that responded to my email, and I appreciate that. Acknowledge my email. Thank you.
Any more comments from the public?
Darrell Andrews, 11120 Douglas Road. I too want to talk about the Knox box. My first concern is it's been on the books for 15 years, whatever. Why is it just now being enforced? There's been a lot of businesses came to Bedford, started in Bedford, changed hands in Bedford. How many of them ever knew about this until all of a sudden? It's like getting a traffic ticket from 15 years ago. You know, you ain't gonna pay that. So why did it take so long to implement this? And if you get in my building, I guarantee you're not gonna like it because there's a really loud alarm. And you may have a key, but you don't have the code to shut the alarm off. I don't see the point of having to go in there if no one's there. Because we're a daycare center, we're mandated minimum 2 people there. If you have 1 child, there's 2 people there. When we close up and we all go home, there's no one there till the next morning. That's just the way it is. And who's gonna put this box on? It's bad enough we gotta pay for it. Can I put it on myself, or do I have to hire this done? We're not getting any information. Is there any information out there available to us as how effective this system is? What is it actually gonna do for the business owner? We've got nothing. I can use a computer, I'm not tech savvy. I can't find all this. It's much like other people say they don't understand it, I don't either. And I do know that we've been inspected by the state fire marshal every 4 years since we've owned the building, so he's been there 4 times. And we have passed our inspection every time with the state and that's mandated for our business. And if he's okay with it, why are we not here that I have to have a box? And he don't even seem to know anything about it. So I would appreciate maybe getting some information before we really go too far. And if we can't get information, maybe we want to put this off for a while till we can get everybody informed or whatever we need to do.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public?
My name is Andrea Allen. Our business is Allen Tool and Die at 7355, Sullier in Temperance. I'm here about the Knox boxes as well. I want to first say that I appreciate our fire department. I appreciate our police department. That isn't the issue. I value this whole process. This is the first time I've been to a Bedford Township meeting. It's very interesting. You've put a tremendous amount of thought and effort into everything you've done. And I guess my concern is my husband and I have worked very hard to have that business. Everything we own is in that business, and we would just really appreciate the same opportunity to make that decision for ourselves, or at least have had some heads up that it was coming as opposed to seeing it in the newspaper. We read it and we were kind of blindsided and we thought, oh my goodness. And so when we tried to find out more information about it, we spoke to Doug Simon, and he was very nice and he explained everything. And I believe he has the best intention for all of us in the township in mind. Our concern is we just wanted a part in that. That's our business, that's our livelihood, and we wanted some say in that. And I don't think it's comparable to sprinklers or smoke detectors or fire extinguishers. It's an element of privacy, and there's just a higher principle involved. And so now this year we give somebody a key to our building. What's next year? What's the following year? And it's just, my concern is it's bigger than a safety issue. And I'm not the best at explaining it, but it just concerns me that as the owner of the company, we didn't have a little more of a heads up and more say in that. That's all.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public?
Rob Hendrickson. I live at 8394 Twin Creek Circle. I own Scoops Ice Cream, and I also am against the Knox box. It's like, any of you want to put your key to your house out, anybody have access to it, or they can get access to it? I mean, I'm sorry, I'm against it. And there again, I'm with her. I didn't hear anything about it either until my wife saw it on Facebook. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public?
My name's Tim Allen. I own 7355 Solier. I could break into that thing in 5 minutes. And if you guys want a demonstration, I could do it out in the parking lot with a portable die grinder. So, you're basically putting your key out there somebody could access in 5 minutes and be into your property. So I don't see it being very safe, but that's just me.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public?
Dale Track, 2842 Sanibel Lane. I want to talk about the Knox boxes as well. You know, to me, fundamentally, many of these business owners don't exist without taking that initial step of risk. They put their capital out there. They understood what it meant to hang a shingle out there, put their sign out there, put their name on it. That was the first initial risk. Anybody that's opened a business, they're saying, okay, I went deep into my savings and I decided to do something about it. Now, if they're willing to look at the risks of, you know, if their door needs to be knocked in, if they're willing to accept that, that should be them. That should be on them. If they're willing to accept those things as an opt-out situation, why wouldn't you give it to them? They took that initial risk to start a business. And I think many times that gets overlooked, that the capital to start a business comes with a lot of thought, a lot of energy, as you heard tonight, that those fundamental principles just can't be ignored. I mean, I understand the fire chief and his staff wants to mitigate risk by not wanting the firefighters hurt, or they want to try to, you know, put out a situation as fast as they can. But if a business owner is willing to take that risk, and if their place goes up in flames or if they have to have a door kicked in, I think that should be on them. I don't believe that they should have to necessarily surrender what they believe true to themselves of protecting information or protecting their clients, or just surrendering a right that most of us probably wouldn't want to do ourselves on a home. So I would take some deep thought into that. The first step that they did is they took that risk with their capital, and that just can't be ignored. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public? Seeing none, Ms. Tenenberry?
I'm going to limit my comments to thanking these people for coming tonight. I always enjoy having a full crowd in the audience and people speaking their mind and sharing their thoughts, so I want to thank all of you for that. And I just want to make one comment regarding the elected officials campaigning on township time. You know, there's no contract. When you're elected to an office, you don't sign a contract. You don't, the law doesn't require a certain number of hours, and I think that's because we are on call 24/7. I get calls any time of the day, time of the night. My husband answers them. He's such a gentleman. He doesn't allow my sleep to be disturbed, but I'm telling you that to be, and we also get personal time. Full-time officials get personal time, vacation time. There's time that you can take off. So things that people see and think, you have their own thoughts about, is not, seeing is not believing, and it's not always the case. And I just want to say that there's 24/7 when you're elected to office. So that's all.
Mr. Steiner?
Just real quick, our fire department had a fire situation tonight. Hopefully everybody's doing well. There was a big fire over off Summerfield. There were some propane tanks and potential possible chemicals inside, not sure yet, but hopefully everybody's okay there. Always say your thoughts and prayers for the men and women that take care of this community as they do.
I did just get an update, and they're doing well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Francis?
This Knox box issue is a troubling issue to me. I can kind of see both sides. One thing that hasn't been mentioned in a public meeting that I'm aware of is if the fire department shows up at your building and they suspect there could be a fire, they don't have a key, so they break the door down. Now, after their fire is put out, the door is broken down. The township is liable if we don't secure that building right then.
and we have a firm that we call, but we have multiple calls a lot of times around here where we're needed in more than one spot at the same time. You'd have to leave at least 2 men there if the crew went off to fight another fire. That's an issue that is troubling to me. How do you balance that? Because I appreciate all those comments also. I empathize with every one of them that spoke tonight, and I share that, but it's a work in progress that we're not done with, but we need to work through to come to a good resolution that serves our people and serves the township, and it's really a safety issue. We need to come to that. We're not there yet. That doesn't mean we don't need to keep working on it.
Mr. Clements?
I just wanted to tell everybody who came tonight and sat through a very long meeting to be heard. I appreciate it. A lot of people have comments and they have feelings. It's a whole nother level of commitment to sit here and to speak your mind, and I really appreciate that you do that. I appreciate people who send emails, and I think at the very least they should be acknowledged. The fire was right across from my house tonight. In fact, I almost didn't make the meeting due to the number of apparatus in the street. I only bring that up to say that, once again, it blows my mind, the quality of service that we have in this community. It's amazing, and having been in emergency services, I've seen fire departments in several communities, full-time fire departments, and I will absolutely put our fire department up against anyone, anywhere, and I'm very appreciative as a father and as a husband to think about that should my family ever need that group, that they're there, and they're largely there as volunteers. So I appreciate it, and prayers go out that everybody is safe and feels better.
Mr. Montry?
I don't have much. I'd echo that, thanking the people coming out for the Knox box and speaking their mind for their personal freedoms. Anyone dealing with the Buckeye cable system thing, I would encourage people to barrage the Michigan Public Service Commission, because that seems like the answer to being heard. I would also say cut it, go online. Like, you're gonna find a service that's much, much better and much, much cheaper, and you'll be happy, I promise. Beyond that, that's all I got.
I have a lot I'd like to say, but I'll keep it short. You just see in the meeting tonight, you can only imagine how much time and effort goes into reading the information on a weekly basis. For every meeting, more or less sitting in my office Monday through Friday from 8 to 5 with an hour lunch. Leaves me very little time to do what you were talking about back there, which I'm blown away that was even brought up, but I am not campaigning on township time. I'm simply doing my job. And I do it every single day, every single weekend. I answer Facebook questions every single night, every single weekend, including Miss Collins back there, who I probably called two or three times about this Knox box issue and have talked, and that's why I didn't email you back. And I've answered her Facebook questions. So I work, like Miss Tinneberry said, 24/7. Never complain. Now you're shaking your head back there because you probably think I don't, but it's not 24/7, but I will answer calls and complaints whenever I receive them, on weekends, on Sunday, and I do my job. Okay, the Knox box thing, we are working on it, and hopefully the next meeting it will be on. The company's flying from Colorado, I think, to give a presentation, and hopefully we can push the legal to have it on along with that, so we can have the presentation and then do what we need to do. Bottom line is, yes, it's been around since 2003. Okay, we had a different fire marshal then, we had a different fire chief then. They did it a different way with the Knox box. So come 6 months ago, okay, Doug Steinman picks up and Chief Massingill, after they get the new fire inspector, they just thought they'd keep moving along with it. Well, it kind of blew up, okay? The board didn't know that they were gonna start enforcing Knox boxes across the board. So we didn't have we were just as surprised, I could speak for the whole board, that people were surprised by the Knox boxes. And I'm glad you're all here too. And believe me, we are listening and we are working on it diligently, you know, with our legal team to bring something back that I think everybody will be happy with. Everybody's not gonna be happy, but I'm sure for the majority, hopefully we can, you know, come to a census, so. Logan, to answer your question, hold on real quick here. So I said at the last meeting, it could be a variety of things. And I got Cub Scout tours. It could be any tours like that they would give for other hours. Lunch, anything to do with PR, vehicle maintenance. I mean, anything outside of those regular hours is they put into the other category. That's the answer I got. Mr. Francis, I believe that's accurate as far as the other hours. So yeah, look for the Knox box on the next agenda. I'm not gonna get into a bunch of stuff. It's just getting too late. Other than that, we stand adjourned.
One thing. I don't think you intended, nor do you want to, throw the chief and the fire inspector under the bus, because our board authorized that ordinance, which was the International Fire Code, which had that in there. Part of that code allows the fire, it's got a term, fire official, to make that call. That official is the chief in our township. He made that call and to enforce it, but our board asked him to do that. So we can't blame.
Back in 2003. And when the update came for the when did we update it? 2012?
15.
2015, that wasn't a change on the update. They only put update changes like this one in 2018. We have a list about a half an inch thick of the updates. Okay, that wasn't one of the updates in 2015. So this current board, you know, is just dealing with what they did in 2003. Now, what I meant to say, if I said it wrong, was, okay, you know, where Chief Massingill came from Madison, they enforced the Knox boxes, 100% compliance, and had one person upset about it. Yeah, their makeup's not the same as Bedford Township. They don't have, you know, the amount of businesses we have, but when they laid it out and they started enforcing it like they did, they didn't come to this board and say, hey, this is what we plan to do with the Knox box. They just did it, which is up to them. It's not up to this board how they enforce the code or how they interpret it. It's up to the fire chief and the fire inspector. With what Mr. Whipple did from 2003 on was different than the way they're doing it now. And what I meant to say is I don't think Mr. Steinman or chief expected this type of backlash from it. And I think that's where we could have, if we knew it was going to end up like this, could have had town hall meetings and done some sessions on the knock. We could have had this person that's coming next week come 7 months ago to kind of explain it. I mean, so.
And that's kind of, and not to interrupt, but that's kind of been put on pause as well while we're figuring that out.
They're not doing Knox box inspections.
They're not doing Knox box like right now while we're getting all this ironed out. So he shouldn't be, that shouldn't be an issue while that's getting ironed out.
Okay. No further questions. We stand adjourned.